like it's a gas fire. They're saying somebody is probably dead, so we're just hoping everything's okay. And they kind of blocked off, kept pushing people back, like 2 blocks back, so just hoping everybody's okay at this point.
About what time did you hear the explosion?
This is probably about 20 minutes ago, so we've been out here about 15, 20 minutes or so.
And can you tell us what's been going on out here since in the last 20 minutes?
They've just been pushing people further and further back. At first, they were like a block back, and they were trying to put it out, but it seems it just kept getting worse. At one point, they had it down, but it just came up in flames again. At this point, they've just been pushing everybody further and further and further back. So this time, we're kind of hoping to see we can get back soon. We have a store that's shut down right now, and our car's over there, so we're just hoping everything's okay and nobody's seriously hurt at this point.
All right, well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us, and please do be safe. So as you can see, Alan, I mean, those flames are still shooting feet into the air. The fire department is just dumping water on it. There's, of course, evacuation orders in the surrounding area. I suspect those orders will continue to grow. As I mentioned, we are about 2 blocks away, and certainly there are a lot of bystanders in the area, people standing around, presumably who were closer to the fire, closer to the explosion when this happened, and then many, of course, local residents. We're starting to see folks come out with masks in the area because the smoke is definitely getting thicker. And a lot of people with their cell phones out just capturing this explosion. Alan, I'm going to send it back to you, but you know, as I mentioned, you covered San Bruno, I covered San Bruno, and I can tell you that this looks very similar, the flames right now, to the early hours of the San Bruno gas line explosion.
Yeah, absolutely it does. Now, Julie, I know you're a couple of blocks away, but have you, and you haven't been there a long, long time, but have you seen yet any PG&E crews roaming the neighborhood?
You know, I have not seen PG&E crews. I'm looking at a green truck that looks like some sort of utility crew. I can't see the marker on the side of the truck, so I don't know who it is. And let's see, we've got a truck over here that it's a white truck that may be PG&E, but again, no clear marking. So no, I have not seen anything, and I have not called PG&E either, so I will say that. They may have crews on the way, and there may be crews out here that I can't see from my vantage point, but I have not seen any clearly marked PG&E vehicles yet. And remember, it did take some time before they turned off that gas following the San Bruno explosion. I remember being out there for a significant amount of time with those flames shooting into the air. So it's not clear how quickly they will be able to get this gas turned off, if in fact that is what this is. Now again, these are unconfirmed reports. We are looking at what looks like very clearly a natural gas explosion, but of course this has not been confirmed by any officials or from PG&E.
No, you and I just going off our experience and speculating here, but when you see the Chopper 5 video, Julie, it seems pretty clear. These flames are coming from underneath the street, and in fact, the last time we saw Chopper 5 over this thing, it looked like part of the street had actually collapsed or the asphalt melted, and that of course creates a bigger hole in the ground. That creates, you know, bigger access for the gas to escape, and then of course immediately catch.
We are just getting confirmation that this is a gas line explosion, and you know, we have some firefighters walking by. As soon as I get off the air with you, I'm going to start sort of tapping on some shoulders and seeing if we can't get a PIO or someone to give us some more official information, but I am getting word in my ear that we do have confirmation that this is a gas line explosion. So we, of course, will be gathering more details out here on the scene, though generally speaking, you guys back there at the station can get more official responses than we can get down here on the ground. Oh, here's a PG&E truck pulling up right now. Again, this is the first PG&E vehicle, at least marked PG&E vehicle, that we have seen out here on the ground. It is right now going through the police tape and heading towards the fire. Certainly, they will be working to get this gas turned off. But as of right now, and as you heard, this has been going on for at least 20 minutes, if not longer, this gas continues to flow from underground.
All right, Julie, I know you want to get to where you can start asking some folks some questions and get us more details, so I'm going to let you at least break away, and we'll keep your photographer online. I know we have crews here in the newsroom who are trying to gather some of that information you were talking about. But Julie Watts, our reporter there on the scene, confirming or getting confirmation now that this was a gas line explosion, and she just showed us that PG&E truck arriving, going past her location. Doesn't mean PG&E crews haven't been in the area, but we are getting a sighting there of a PG&E crew getting as close as they can. But you can see we've got the 2 inset boxes there. If you look to the right from Chopper 5, again, we're showing you the firefight from Chopper 5, and you can see just how far away the firefighters have to stay, but they fortunately have the equipment to get the water onto this fire, onto that building, to keep it from spreading. The flames themselves are burning because it is natural gas. They haven't been able to turn it off. On the left, I just saw on the street going past where Julie Watts is located there. Again, this is the corner of Geary and Parker, but another backhoe. And I'm sure once they get the source of this turned off, they'll be able to get the backhoe in there and start working their way towards getting this area of where the explosion happened. They can investigate and they can determine exactly what happened here. But we've seen a construction crew, as we look at some brand new Citizen app video coming into us. You can see the flames there in the distance. Traffic stopped, the crowd already gathering. The call came in at 1:08, according to San Francisco police, of construction accident. Backhoe is seen at the corner of where this is happening, a construction accident, and then an explosion, as we're now getting confirmation that a natural gas line has been compromised, if you will. As much as PG&E is under scrutiny these days for electrical lines and wildfires, this appears to be something that was caused by either a contractor or some other type of construction crew, not necessarily associated with PG&E, but the backhoe was seen. There it is at the very bottom of your screen, right at the base of those flames. And you can see that quite likely that backhoe dug into the street doing some type of construction work on the corner. And quite possibly that's what broke the line, ignited the fire, and started this thing. Again, it's been burning for over 40 minutes now, as the call came in just after 1 o'clock. But the flames are shooting out towards the middle of the intersection there at Geary and Parker. But quite clearly, those flames have torched that corner building. The corner of Geary and Parker has quite a few businesses in it. It's a mix of business and residential. Many parts of San Francisco look like that. There's a post office across the street. There's a Chase Bank. There's a restaurant, Hong Kong Lounge 2, H&R Block tax office as well. They've all been evacuated. As we heard from Michael, our eyewitness who works down the street at the Verizon store, first they evacuated the first block, and then as things intensified, they started moving people further and further back away from this corner. Traffic obviously affected. The streets closed in the neighborhood. Muni service has been affected, obviously, although we see that Muni bus just sitting there. So we've got Julie Watts back with us, and Julie, you've got another eyewitness with you?
Yeah, we do. If you mind stepping over here, sir. Sure. So I do want to say I did just go speak to police. They're going to send a PIO over to give us some more pertinent information about evacuations and what folks need to know in the area. But in the meantime, you say you were here and you witnessed the explosion?
I did, yeah. I was walking through the intersection just before where it, exploded. And then right when I walked through, I looked up and I saw a bunch of people in front of me. They started screaming and yelling. And so I turned around and saw the flame growing behind me. It just kind of started erupting, and actually thought it was a bomb for a second. So I just started taking off down the street. And then when I got to the end of the corner, there were a lot of other people standing, watching it. So I turned around and started watching too. And then they started clearing everyone out, and we crossed the street. But I think it was seconds after, because I heard a little explosion, and then I saw these people. So.
Do you have any idea what building was impacted by this? What buildings? I'm sure they're plural.
No, I don't actually. When I looked back, I saw that the side of one was starting to catch on fire. For a while, it was just in the street, and then about 5 minutes later, the light post started catching on fire, is from what I could tell. But at that point, they started kind of clearing everyone out and getting us further away. So.
Any indication of any injuries? I mean, obviously, we have to assume that there were injuries involved if there was anyone near that explosion.
Yeah, I really hope not. I looked back and saw that there was a little Bobcat construction machine, and it didn't look like anyone was in there. But I did walk past a grandma with a child at that intersection, so I hope they were far enough away. But it looked, when I crossed the street and I looked back, it didn't look like anyone was injured. But a few seconds later, I was trying to think of people who were standing at that intersection as I was going through, walking the other way. So hopefully they had already got down the road before the explosion happened.
So can you tell me what's going through your head right now, having been just feet away from this explosion?
Yeah, no. I hope everyone's okay. That was the first thing. I'm also feel lucky. I'm a lucky dog right now. I thought it was a goner. It was just a few seconds after I'd walked through it, and That's it. Mostly just kind of shell shocked, you know. Life's fragile. These things can happen anytime.
Absolutely. What's your name?
I'm Michael.
Michael.
Michael Comstock.
Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. Before I let you go, Alan, do you have any questions for Michael?
No, I was just asking. He said he was a few seconds past it, and he talked about the grandmother and child who walked by him. I'm sure that he saw other people who were close. Does he know what that business is and how people might have been coming and going from it?
Yeah, so you walked right by this. Alan was asking sort of similar to what I'd asked. Do you have any idea what business that was when you walked by? Do you remember what you were walking by just before the explosion?
I just come out of Sheer Image to get a haircut. I don't remember the exact business. No, I was on the phone and just kind of walking down the street, not really looking at the buildings or anything. So I don't know what was there.
And the grandmother and the child sort of stuck out in your head, but you don't really remember any other people?
Yeah, I remember seeing people and also looking up and seeing the people who just like started screaming in front of me. But yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time, and we, of course, are so happy that you were safe and not injured. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
So again, this explosion happened. We're hearing probably close to about 30 minutes ago. We are on Geary in sort of, I guess it's the outer Richmond. The Spruce is the street that you're looking at right there. This is quite clearly, from our experience, a natural gas explosion. You can see it appears as of right now, the gas has not been turned off. We did see one PG&E truck drive through the police tape that you're looking at right now. I can tell you that it's definitely getting more smoky out here, which would imply that there are probably more buildings burning just past that tree that you see up there. We've heard from folks that there was a very loud explosion. They heard a rushing air, which would also indicate that it was natural gas. So I think, as you can see these flames continuing to shoot, it's quite clearly, Alan, a natural gas explosion here.
Yeah, Julie, you and I were talking about the San Bruno explosion. You know, the sound of that, it sounds like a jet engine when you get close to it. It's so loud like that, right?
It is true, and I will tell you, with the San Bruno explosion, I remember being out there reporting on the explosion and watching the flames shooting into the air for a significant amount of time. I don't recall now exactly how long it was, but I remember being surprised by how long it took to turn that gas off. And again, we've been out here for a significant amount of time. I'm looking at my clock, and maybe someone back at the station can tell me how long we've been on the air. But you know, certainly for over 30 minutes.
Julie, the call came in about 50 minutes ago. So it's not quite an hour, about 50 minutes?
50, 50.
Yeah. So it has.
Okay, so probably right around 1 o'clock.
But you know what strikes me?
We're looking at it going on an hour here.
Almost an hour, and now we're seeing that fire has worked its way well into the top level, what I think are residences of that top corner building, or that corner building, the top floor, or apartments. And when you look at that smoke, Julie, you're saying it's intensifying, so I'm sure more of that building smoke is getting to you as well.
Right.
Yeah, it's one of the colder days of San Francisco, but I didn't detect much wind when I came in today.
You know, I will say there's a little bit of a breeze out here, and I'm looking at
up above and getting down on the fire.
Yeah, you know, it does look like that to me, and they are a bit of a ways back from this fire, but you know, I have to believe, Alan, it's kind of a futile effort. I mean, I think they're trying to protect the surrounding buildings, and certainly, you know, the more water they can pour in those surrounding buildings, the better chance they have of not catching fire. But there's nothing they can do to extinguish this fire until that gas is turned off. And right now, it is quite clearly still shooting out of the ground. We are seeing flames, stories, 3-4 stories into the air.
Yeah, it's very intense. And Julie, I'm just getting word that San Francisco Fire is now searching, looking for 5 workers who are unaccounted for. They're reported as missing, and 4 buildings total are involved. But as you said, that this fire is just as intense now as it was when they first reported it just after 1 o'clock today. But again, 5 workers are missing. They are unaccounted for, and have no idea about people missing from these buildings. We know the evacuation order went out immediately to get people out of the buildings and certainly off of the streets. But again, 5 workers.
Alan, I'm looking at a map right now from where I'm standing, and I see that on the corner there's an H&R Block. There's a restaurant. It appears to be a restaurant called Hong Kong Lounge. Across the street, there's a post office and a Chase Bank. But it looks like those buildings that are most likely involved are on the corner of Parker and Geary, and that would be an H&R Block, at least according to my map here, and the Hong Kong Lounge. And we did speak to those witnesses earlier who said that there was some construction equipment in the area. So you mentioned that there were some construction workers. You're getting word of construction workers that are missing?
Well, yes, 5 workers who are missing, and at this point we're going to have to assume that they were part of this crew, because we did see the backhoe that's very close to the source of the flames. So we kind of have to go with, well, they were part of that crew that was working there on the street corner. Now, exactly what they were doing, what the construction project was, we don't know yet, and I know you're too far away to really be able to tell which building it is, what they might have been doing, what the construction was that was going on.
Right, but now that you mention it, and we've gotten a little bit closer, I can see through the smoke that there are some what looks like construction vehicles there right next to the flames. Though, of course, it is too soon to even presume about what the cause of this was.
Absolutely, and I know there's, in one of our shots, I think it's your camera, we can see a backhoe, but that I believe was brought in after the fact. I'm sure everybody's staging at this point would be the way I'd put it. Everybody's staging to try to move in. They can't get close enough because the flames are so intense. This fire is still burning unchecked.
Yeah, and Alan, I mentioned San Bruno before, and it strikes me again. I was surprised at how long it took to turn off the gas during San Bruno, and here we are going on over an hour. I don't know, I wouldn't presume to know how difficult it is to turn off gas to an area. We did see the PG&E truck come through here about 20 minutes ago. And I have to tell you, I'm a little surprised that we are still seeing these flames shooting into the air. And quite clearly, the gas is still flowing. One might assume that this long after San Bruno that there is some sort of emergency cutoff switch that would allow them to quickly get this gas turned off. And we assume it's PG&E, but of course, we don't want to make any assumptions.
Julie, as I said earlier, PG&E coming under a lot of fire because of the wildfires and transmission lines, electricity, and all of that. But at this point, it is most likely PG&E's responsibility to get the gas off. However, it has to be safe enough for the workers to be able to get to whatever valve they need to get to. But
of course.
We're seeing that not only the flames intensify from the gas line underground, which has melted some of the asphalt on the street. And again, this is Geary and Parker. The neighborhood is Jordan Park, but the fire has worked its way well into some of these buildings, despite firefighter efforts using those ladder trucks to get the water up above and down onto those flames. But we're working on the assumption here that the backhoe that we have seen at the corner there actually hit the gas line. And until we get that confirmed, that is just a working theory that we have here. But there's the backhoe we're talking about, and we can only assume that because it's a construction crew, those 5 workers who are missing had to be part of that crew. But Julie Watts has been with us. I know she wants to start asking some more questions about this. With 5 workers missing and unaccounted for, we want to get some details on that. Evacuations in the neighborhood, as one of the witnesses, Michael, who works down the street at the Verizon store, said, at first it was a block, and then they started moving people further and further away. Working them back away from this. And from what we could tell by police lines and fire crews where they are staged, even though Geary's a very big street, a wide street, they are certainly working this thing. There you can see it. There's a good perspective right there. All right, on the phone with us now is Erica Cato with SFMTA. Erica, are you with me?
Hi, Alan.
Hi. What can you tell us about a service, how it's affected, and what's happening in the neighborhood there?
Sure. So right now we do have all of our 38 and our 38 rapid buses that traditionally run on Geary all rerouted to Anza Street. So as you know, Anza is a much smaller street. It can't handle as much traffic. So there will be buses running on it in the meantime. And it looks like we have 4 stops missed. So people that want to take the 38 Geary, our riders, should get on and off at Anza for the 4 stops between 2nd Avenue and Masonic.
And have you been told, do you know, was any bus close by when this happened?
You know, I've been looking at our logs, and we haven't received any reports, so it doesn't look like we were directly affected. So right now we're just dealing with the service impact.
No, that's really great news. That's really great. So the 38 and the 38 Rapid being rerouted to, you said Anza?
Correct.
Okay, and so people should, of course, take this into account, and if they can possibly avoid the area, don't even try to take Muni. But you're going to have this service for people who do need the transportation?
That's right. So people that need to head downtown or get to the avenues, we still have service running, but they may want to allow themselves a little extra time.
Okay, fantastic. Erica Cato, SFMTA. Thanks so much. We appreciate it. Again, this is the service down Geary, 38 Rapid being rerouted around that neighborhood. And as she said, it doesn't appear that any Muni bus was directly affected when this explosion happened. As we look now, well, one shot showing you the neighbors in the area, people gathering to witness this. Everybody's got their phones out. It's unbelievable because what we see from Chopper 5 Live now is not only the flames have burned, singed the building and burned the top floor, but they have worked, they've worked well into that building and possibly the building to the left of it, and even possibly the building across the street. Now, if this is indeed what I think to be the Hong Kong Lounge, the restaurant across the street would be the H&R Block office building. And that, I believe, might be the second building across the street that has now caught fire. But again, these buildings evacuated just as soon as they could get the word out. And we haven't been told that anybody's trapped in those buildings or anyone's been injured. But across the street, there is a U.S. Post Office and a Chase Bank. As far as we know, those buildings unaffected. And the Postal Service spokesperson said they were able to evacuate the workers and customers who were in that building. But everything is being affected because if you're just joining us, this fire, construction fire, an explosion, a natural gas line has been compromised there. And this happened at 1:08 was when the first call came in. So exactly an hour ago when this started. And as Julie Watts, our reporter out there in the neighborhood, was telling us, she and I both here when the San Bruno gas line explosion happened. And I know because I was on the air at the time, it was during our 6 o'clock news when that happened, and we were on the air straight for 6 hours. But it took hours and hours for them to be able to get that gas turned off. And Julie, here we are. The flames, as high as they are, it's just unbelievable. As you said, they're 3-4 stories high.
Yeah, it is really just an impressive sight out here, Alan. I can tell you, photographer Chris Mistra was mentioning the more white smoke you see, the closer they are to getting the fire out, except for the gas that continues to billow from the ground, fueling these flames. So really at this point, all firefighters can do is douse the surrounding buildings and hope they can keep this thing from spreading. But until PG&E can get that gas turned off, there is no telling how long this fire will continue. I can tell you there is more and more smoke in the area. It is certainly getting more difficult to breathe out here. That would imply that there's more building burning, right? So more fuel that is being burned right now.
That's what we're seeing from Chopper 5, Julie, and because your ground shot shows that the smoke has thickened quite a bit. That's why I was wondering about the breeze and the weather and so forth, because if the smoke is just staying down there at street level, that's going to make it really, really tough for people in the neighborhood. And that's what it appears to be happening is the smoke's not really clearing out of there because we don't have a strong onshore breeze this afternoon yet.
Well, actually, Alan, you know what's interesting is since we first spoke about that about 20 minutes ago, the wind has actually kicked up. In fact, it is getting breezy and sort of chilly out here. We're watching the police tape blow around in the wind. So, you know, we're hopeful that that can sort of clear some of the smoke out of the area, though, of course, wind is never a good thing when you're trying to fight a fire. And as I'm speaking, I'm feeling raindrops on my head. So there certainly are scattered showers off and on. We do see some firefighters heading over here. Lieutenant Baxter, who is generally our PIO for these types of things, is walking this way. We have been told that there is going to be a media briefing here shortly, and I suspect we will probably bring it to you live. We see some firefighters walking this way, and we're expecting to get a little information. So stand by here as we hopefully start this media briefing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I saw something in your video, in your camera shot, Julie. I don't want to state the obvious, but there were street signs, construction signs, the big orange signs that say lane closed. So, you know, I don't know how that one got by me for so long, but obviously the crews were working on a street project here. Let's go to the chief now and listen in.
This is Joanne Hayes-White, fire chief for a few more months. What we have behind us is a third alarm fire that we declared, came in around 1:18, report of a fire or a gas explosion. It's believed to be workers doing some fiber optic work in the street that might have breached a gas line. So what you see is open flame. PG&E is on scene trying to stop that gas leak, but until such time we're here, we've declared evacuations and checked every building around the perimeter for a 1-block radius. There's nobody within the distance in a 1-block radius. No injuries to report. There were 8 workers right near the scene. They're all present and accounted for. No injuries at this time. Still a very active scene. We're hoping that PG&E gets control of the gas leak very soon.
Any indications of any other injuries, bystanders?
None to report at this time, which is great news. That's the best news of all.
Everyone's saying that the flames have been just relentless. The fire is relentless. It's been the same as it was when it first started. How are fire crews working vigorously to try to get that under control?
So at this point, we're trying to protect exposures. We have one interior, exterior. We have one fire building. There have been 3 exposures. Our main objective right now is obviously to keep everyone safe and to not have that fire extend. So what we're doing is calling it sort of a defensive mode, surrounding and drowning until such time that PG&E can stop that leak.
Is this bringing up memories of what happened in San Bruno when pipelines exploding, can't get the fire out?
I would say it's not quite as dramatic as that. It's pretty dramatic, I will say, but we have a good handle on it. It's something that we're accustomed to doing, we're trained for. We would like the leak to get tamped down, but not quite as extensive as San Bruno. So, you know, there's a lot of work going on in the city, like you know, and so it looks like I would anticipate that the gas line was breached by the workers working on the fiber optics.
What's taking so long for PG&E to turn off the gas?
They're on scene. It's complicated. There's a lot of piping under the streets and so forth, so they're doing their best. I believe they had a pretty good response time. We were here first, but they have a good response time. We're working collaboratively with them, and the main thing is, again, we're keeping everyone out at a safe distance, including you, our media friends. We just, you know, we need patience until the gas leak gets out, but I'm confident that it'll be contained soon. As soon as the gas leak is tamped down, we will have it under control.
What's destroyed back there?
I believe it's a restaurant. It's 3300 block of Geary and Parker. So the main fire building is the corner building, which is a restaurant.
What kind of work were they doing at the time?
Okay, so I'll answer every question. Just take them one at a time, please.
The work that was happening?
There were workers working in the street installing fiber optic equipment underground.
Who were the workers on site?
There were workers, private contractors, doing some fiber optic work.
What can you tell us about PG&E's plan to turn off gas in situations like this?
You'll have to ask PG&E.
So you guys don't have any sort of cohesive plan, fire department partnering with PG&E in an event like this?
So we partner with them all the time. We kind of stay in our lane and do what we do, and PG&E has their protocols. Right now we have a joint command. We have our incident commander that's overseeing the fire. We've asked PG&E to join us. We have done some exercises, but they're the experts in terms of terminating the leak and getting to the source of what they need to do. So we partner with them, but we leave the experts to do their work.
Can you back up? I'm sorry. There was a tweet that went out that said it was confusing how many people were accounted for or unaccounted for. How is everyone doing?
So right now, we were told that there were 8 workers in that vicinity doing the fiber optic work underground. All have been accounted for. at this point, have received a briefing, and there's no injuries that have been reported to me at this time. And you've been very patient. Somebody had a question here. Go ahead.
You said that there are several properties. Do you know which businesses are involved in the flames right now?
I don't, but as soon as we get a better handle on containing and controlling the fire, we will. We know that one is a restaurant, and then there are 3 other nearby exposure buildings, as we call them.
Hong Kong Lounge, is it called?
That's my understanding is the fire building, correct, 3300 block.
And those folks are okay inside the buildings, or anybody who's walking by, do you know that?
No injuries have been reported to me at this time. It's a very fluid situation. So we have, medical personnel on scene. We have not had to use them at this time for either our members or the community, whether they be workers or patrons at the restaurant.
What do you think of the intensity of this fire? We're seeing flames shooting up. I mean, I don't even know how high behind you.
Yeah, I mean, it's intense because it's been going on now for a while. So we're hoping, again, that PG&E, it's complicated what they have to do. They have to get into the street and shut that down and keep their workers safe as well. So it's worthy of a third alarm, and that's what it is at this point.
Is it taking too long to put it out, in your firefighting opinion?
The sooner the better is my motto.
How many agencies are involved, and are you calling for other agencies to come out and help as well?
So the fire department has this handled, and the rest of the city is safe too. That's what we do. We have a third alarm response, so over 100 members out of our 350 that are working today. We have a lot of different agencies. We have Department of Emergency Management, the PD is helpful, MTA is helpful, PG&E obviously is huge in this event today. So we're all working together to make sure everyone stays safe and that we get this under control as soon as we can.
What can you tell us about evacuations? Anything people need to know?
We've evacuated the entire perimeter, a block each side of the street.
How difficult is it to put out a fire that started from, a gas fire? I mean, until the gas is off, you can't do it.
Yeah, we're hiring. That's a great point. We need. That's why I think we need to, assure everyone that we're going to sort of surround and drown until such time as the gas leak is contained and terminated. So it's difficult. It won't go out basically until they take care of what they need to take care of.
Does water work in this situation? Is it just water that you're putting on, or do you really need the power to get turned off?
We're applying water, but again, more than anything, is to contain it to the building of origin and those 3 exposures. We don't want it to extend any further, and I have confidence that it won't.
We've got time for one more question for the chief.
What is the timeline on getting a handle on the situation?
As soon as PG&E does their job, our job will become much easier. But I want to assure everyone's working really hard, including PG&E, all of our members. It is intense. I mean, as you look down, it's an intense fire. I'm not going to downplay it, but it'll be a lot. Our job will be a lot easier when the.
You're not concerned about anyone being injured at this point?
No, I mean, not at this point, because we have a good perimeter set up so that no one is in the danger zone, if you will, except for the firefighters and the PG&E workers. But we're going about this methodically. We've done this many times before. It'll go out hopefully as soon as we can get the PG&E to get their work completed.
Thank you, everybody. So we're going to have another media briefing. We will announce that on our Twitter, which is at SFFDPIO. This is the official media staging area. If you can please.
All right, Alan. So if you can hear me, that was our first media briefing. We will be getting some more media briefings here as information becomes available.
This is a safe spot. Please stay.
All right, Julie Watts, there we were listening to San Francisco Fire Chief Joanne Hayes White using a term that I got to tell you I had not heard before, surround and drown. So it means they're surrounding this thing, they're putting tons and tons of water on it, as we can see, working from a safe distance away, because as it's now been confirmed, there was a construction crew putting in some fiber optic equipment underground that hit an underground gas line. They're waiting for PG&E. They're waiting for it to be safe. They're waiting for PG&E to get in there and turn off the gas, the source to this fire. But this fire has obviously consumed part of a building on the corner there. It is the restaurant, which seems to be the Hong Kong Lounge 2. So that building, the restaurant on the ground floor, and then it appears to be apartments, residences up above. All right, on the phone with me now, Angela Tomey. Angela, you with me?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, I can hear you too. So you work down the street from where this happened?
Oh, Yes, I'm a block and a half down.
And can you kind of describe, well, now I have to interrupt for just a second because we are seeing emergency crews taking one person off on what appears to be an emergency stretcher there, trying to get him to, I would presume, an ambulance that's safely away. But at this point, the fire chief had said no injuries. But can you, Angela, kind of describe what happened?
Yeah, we didn't hear anything, but I saw a bunch of fire crew going down the street, and we went outside of our office and just saw huge gas main break. Huge fireball right now. It's still going on. It started about 1 o'clock today. It's now 2 p.m., so it's been going for about an hour. Still going as strong as it first was. Fire crews and PG&E PG&E just got here. And the fire crew has been on scene now.
Now, did you say you did not hear an explosion?
We did not in our office.
Did you feel it? Could you feel the building or the ground kind of shake?
No.
No, you just knew that there was fire down the street, or somebody told you we got to get out. And did they evacuate you?
We are not evacuated.
You're
We're
self-evacuated.
block and a half, but yes.
I don't blame you at all. I'd self-evacuate too. And as far as you can tell, fire crews are, well, now actually, again, I can see the picture. You can't, so I'll describe it to you, Angela. But we're seeing construction crews actually starting to dig another hole in the ground. So I just want to keep our viewers aware of kind of what's going on, because the Chopper 5 is live, and it appears they're trying to get to some part of that gas line. But when you got out into the street, describe kind of what you saw: the flames, the smoke. People obviously they would be running away from where this happened. Your direction?
Running away, yeah, just a huge fireball. I knew right away that was the gas line. My dad is a gas foreman his whole life, so I knew exactly what it was. So it's a fireball, and it still is a fireball right now. Now there's a lot of emergency crew more on scene than it was about an hour ago, and I hope everyone is okay.
Now, they had said that this construction crew had been working in the street, putting some fiber optic equipment underground. Had you observed, have you noticed that there was this work going on?
Yeah, since yesterday.
Okay,
so past couple of days.
Fairly recent, just a few days they've been working on this.
Yeah.
And did you, when you got outside and could see what was going on, could you see that anyone was hurt? I mean, we're being told at this point no injuries, but I did tell you that we saw somebody on one of those gurneys from an ambulance.
Yeah, I could not see if anyone was hurt. I mean, again, we were about a block away, so yeah, I didn't see anyone hurt at all. Yeah.
And
I'm still here.
Are you at work right now? Are you back in your building?
Yeah, we're in our building. Yeah.
And where do you want to say where you work? What the business is?
At Sierra Electric.
Sierra Electric. All right. Well, Angela Tomey, thanks so much. I appreciate you joining us here on Channel 5. I appreciate it. Eyewitness accounts are, great to have, always the best. You guys were there when it happened, and she works down the street from where this happened. Didn't hear anything, but quickly got outside and self-evacuated. They're back in their building. They feel fairly safe right now. But if you're just joining us, here's kind of what we know. Let me recap, because the call came in after 1 o'clock. I was told 1:08. I think the fire chief, Chief White, said 1:18, but at any rate, it was just shortly after 1 o'clock where the call came in of an explosion in the street. Construction crew apparently hit this gas line. This is the corner of Geary and Parker in the Jordan Park neighborhood of San Francisco, which, if you're not familiar with the nuances of San Francisco neighborhoods, it's just east of the inner Richmond. So this is a very busy neighborhood. You can see the street. Geary is pretty wide. There's that center median going down there. They have closed off this area. Muni service has been affected. There are a couple of bus lines, the 38 and the 38 Rapid, that are still running, but they're not running down Geary. They have been rerouted to Anza, so you're advised to try to find another mode of transportation. Even though they'll be able to pick you up at a stop, they won't be able to take you down Geary, so adjust for that. Initially, we have been told some of the construction workers were unaccounted for. Chief White says no, that's not the case. The briefing she received is that there were 8 construction workers working on this fiber optic project when they hit the gas line, and that all of them have now been accounted for. PG&E is now on the scene. Chopper 5, when it gets close enough, has shown us that there are some backhoes in the area. They appear to be trying to dig up another part of the street. And Julie Watts has been out there for some time now, and she attended the press conference with Chief White. And you've been able to observe what's going on. I don't know if you can see those crews, Julie, but they look to be working in the street trying to dig into another part of this line.
You know, I actually can't see the crews on the ground right now because the smoke is so thick. And actually, I would say over the last 15 minutes or so, it's gotten a lot thicker out here, Alan. We're starting to see people sort of covering their mouths, similar to what we saw during the wildfires. It really is getting pretty thick out here. Now, I do want to point out those flames are still shooting into the air. We heard from the fire chief earlier that gas is still very clearly flowing from the street. They said PG&E is out here, and the fire chief was very careful to say they are working hard. Everybody is doing their job. You know, we've mentioned San Bruno a few times, Alan. Both of us reported on San Bruno, and we remarked at how long it took PG&E to turn off the gas. Well, keep in mind, our assistant news director, Lisa White, just reminded me in that case, they had trouble physically getting to the shutoff valve because of the fire. We don't know why it's taking so long to turn it off in this case. PG&E arrived, I would say, about 20 minutes after we did, and they've certainly been working on this for a while. You can see a lot of white smoke blowing this way. I'm going to step out of your shot. And all of a sudden, the smoke really did seem to get a bit more intense here. We certainly have some windy conditions out here. I've been feeling some sprinkles from time to time. And as you mentioned, it did appear from those chopper shots that they were taking one person away on a stretcher. The fire chief, at least at the time of the briefing, told us that there were no known injuries and nobody was missing that they were aware of, but certainly this is still an active and ongoing situation. I can tell you, if people do have compromised health, the smoke is very thick, so there's always a possibility of some sort of medical issues due to the thick smoke in the air. And that fire, as you can see, those flames still shooting stories into the air. Alan, it does not look like these flames, unless they can get that gas turned off, like they really will be able to do much to get these flames out. As the fire chief mentioned, they are taking a, quote, surround and drown approach. And certainly that's what you and I were chatting about early on, sort of hypothesizing that the only thing they really can do at this point is just drench the surrounding buildings to try to prevent these fires from spreading. But right now, those flames are just billowing feet into the air, and it does appear that the wind out here is picking up. So,
well, Julie,
unless
Julie, let me jump in here. Julie, let me jump in. Julie, let me jump in here because I can tell you why that smoke is intensifying. We can see it in our chopper shot here. We're taking it full here to give you a better perspective, because what's happening here is now that those flames have worked their way into more of the building, the structure. This has become not just a gas line that is burning, the gas is burning, but it's now a huge structure fire because it's the restaurant, it's the apartments above that, and now it appears to have worked its way even further into the building. It looks like that would actually be going down Parker Avenue, so away from the Geary side, but it's now become more of a structure fire, so that's probably why you're seeing a lot more of that white smoke, gray smoke, and you're probably starting to smell that too.
Yeah, it's definitely getting difficult to breathe, and as I mentioned, a lot of people are sort of pulling their shirts up over their faces now, trying to breathe. And I will tell you, my eyes are watering pretty badly here because the smoke is so thick in the air. You know, I have to say, Alan, definitely we were happy to hear that there were no known injuries, and certainly no known missing folks. But the thicker that this smoke gets, if people are still hovering around, it is going to get harder and harder to breathe. And I have to wonder if the person being taken away on a stretcher might have been impacted or overcome by smoke in any way.
I'm thinking that too, Julie. I'm going to hope that in all our trucks we have these N95 masks that we all learned were so crucial, so important, you know, during the fire in Butte County, and of course the year before that, the fire up in Sonoma and Napa County. So I'm going to give you a little break. Hopefully you can get away from the smoke or get a mask on or something. But let's go to the phone line now. I'm told the former mayor of San Bruno, Jim Ruane, is with me. Jim, you with me?
I'm with you.
Hi, thanks so much. And I don't know, if you're looking at this, I'm sure that you have thoughts of, oh my gosh, is something like this happening again?
Well, it's a horrible feeling because the firefighters are just you know, in a reactive mode, they really can't attack this thing until that gas is shut off. In San Bruno, it took an hour and 46 minutes for PG&E to shut the gas off, and it was just an inferno that was 2,000 degrees and 200 feet into the air, and it did horrible damage. So it's frustrating for firefighters, and I'm sure PG&E too. You just wonder why they couldn't have shut it off sooner with maybe automatic shut-off valves or something. It's a very frustrating situation.
Well, that issue of the automatic shutoff valves certainly came up after San Bruno, and I don't know, did the city get any direct answers as to what was going to happen to correct that situation?
They actually put in quite a number of automatic shutoff valves. Where they are, I don't know, and where the logistics are, I don't know. But I know with the San Bruno situation, they were forced to actually go against what they didn't want to do in the beginning because they were worried about shutting off gas to neighborhoods and stuff. And I said, wait a minute here. So people lost their lives. If you could have shut that off a lot sooner, the destruction would have been a lot less.
Absolutely, and just to be fair here, we're not trying to pile on PG&E here. They're under a lot of fire from San Bruno, a lot of a lot of criticism because of the wildfires and so forth. But this, at least initially, the cause of it is not related to PG&E. It looks like an outside construction crew hit a line. But the issue does become, why can't we get the gas turned off quicker?
Exactly. And, the issue we had after San Bruno was getting PG&E to work a lot closer with our local first responders. I mean, it's a totally different situation in a steam well that just went off versus a construction accident, which is the majority of what these accidents are. But it's a horrible thing. You can see these small little ones in distribution lines around homes, but when you get into transmission lines and something bigger, it can devastate neighborhoods.
And of course, Jim, we all kind of learned a lot after San Bruno. You and the folks in your town probably learned the most, more than you ever thought you would learn about infrastructure in California. But, there's so much that we don't know about what's been put in and how it works and how old it is and so on and so forth. That, it's when I look at the Chopper 5 shot right now, they're digging into the ground. It almost kind of looks like looking for a needle in a haystack.
That's right. There are valves somewhere around there that could stop this thing right now. But as I said before, and after San Bruno, and I'll still say it again, you drive across a bridge and you can see the rust, and you go across a pothole and you can feel it in your car. But what's underground, you don't know. And unfortunately, what we found out in San Bruno, and it's changed a little bit now, is PG&E didn't know what they had in the ground for an awful lot of their lines. So hopefully that's in a corrective state right now.
And with the perspective that you have looking back on what happened in San Bruno, what is the number one thing that you learned coming out of that people all over the Bay Area and even Northern California should know and should learn from that?
Well, a frustrating situation we had was a utility that wasn't doing what they were supposed to be doing. They were making their own rules and laws, and the bigger part of it in some ways is the California Public Utilities Commission, the oversight that was supposed to be monitoring what this utility was doing. They were not doing their job either. And between the two of them, of course, it led to 8 deaths in San Bruno and 38 homes and a whole neighborhood destroyed. So it's, and the same kind of thing is being reported in some of these fires, although they're not responsible for everything. But, who's overseeing all of this? Where's the transparency? I mean, people are paying billions of dollars to PG&E and other utilities to take care of their basic needs. Nobody wants them to go away, but my goodness, they have to be a safe utility. And the oversight, I don't believe, is still there.
Well, and bottom line is we're all customers. I mean, we're all going to be facing a huge bill here for whatever happens, with PG&E. We're all customers.
You're absolutely right, and I've had some frustrating situations and criticism in the last couple of weeks. Some people that I know say, wait a minute, the judge is allowing them to give bonuses to people when in fact they've actually lied on some of the reports from 2012 to 2017 regarding their gas operation. All this time while they were in court, because of San Bruno. So it's a frustrating situation for us. We're spending an awful lot of money. Their financial tentacles are very, very long and very deep, and it's something that the PUC has to really get a hold of.
Well, and if I'm correct here, that's why the federal judge has been so tough on PG&E because of San Bruno, and in the wildfires called him a convicted felon because of what happened with PG&E and wasn't going to let him off the hook here for some of the wildfire.
Absolutely, and good for him too. It's got to be tough. I've said, a number of times somebody, because of San Bruno, should have gone to jail, and nobody did. And when you're dealing with a corporate entity, a corporate's a person according to the courts, that's fine. 6 felony counts, obstruction of justice, but no person had to really suffer for that. And there were people there that I believe were culpable.
All right, Jim Ruane, thanks so much. Former Mayor of San Bruno, great insight. We appreciate it. We're going to let you go, but thank you so much for joining us. Jim Ruane with the city of San Bruno, former mayor. And to be fair, we're certainly trying, and we will get someone from PG&E with us. They have the priority of getting this thing under control, getting the gas off, but we certainly want to hear from them and hear their side of what's going on. And you heard during the press conference with Fire Chief White, one of the reporters asked, what is taking so long? And of course she said, they're waiting on PG&E, and that would be something PG&E would have to answer. But there's a good shot of the crews that are working. They're digging into the ground. They've had a couple of backhoes there. They're trying to find another way into this gas line, but as I was saying to Jim, it's kind of like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Somewhere there's got to be a type of a valve. I'm sure they have some idea of where it is, otherwise they wouldn't be just digging in that location for no reason. But we certainly hope they can get this thing turned off before too long. But if you're just joining us, what's happened here started shortly after 1 o'clock at Geary and Parker in the Jordan Park neighborhood of San Francisco. It's a big intersection, but there's a post office, a Chase Bank, H&R Block office, and the main building on the corner there that seems to be destroyed by this fire. The fire got well into this building. There's a restaurant on the street level floor. The Hong Kong Lounge 2 is the name of it. But roads have been closed. Muni service has been rerouted in this area. We are told that a construction crew, one witness who works down the street said she noticed the crew had been out there for a couple of days. They have been working to put in some fiber optic equipment there. This is a private contractor, and those folks, 8 members of the construction crew, they used that little backhoe and they hit a gas line, and that is what ruptured. They compromised that line. There was an explosion, and then obviously the fire has resulted, those flames shooting 30, 40 feet or more into the air, and it's destroyed apparently that one corner building, but fire keeps burning back towards Parker. We're told now that patients of a medical center had to be evacuated. This on Parker. Here's a picture of the folks the employees there, and you can see in the background there next to that SUV, the gurneys on the sidewalk. Patients had to be evacuated from this medical center on Parker Avenue. Again, it's Geary and Parker. That whole area is closed. They evacuated an area, 1 block radius is what the chief said. I wouldn't be surprised that certainly people in a greater area than that self-evacuated and got out, because some people said they didn't hear the explosion, but they knew that there was a fire going on down the street. They could hear the emergency response, and Chief White did say how many crew they have working this thing, but it's at least a 3-alarm fire. The last I saw was 3-alarm, if not more. But she used a phrase called surround and drown. So what they're trying to do is contain this thing until the PG&E can get the gas turned off, but they surround it and they just flood this thing with as much water. And they've been on it for well over an hour, now an hour and a half, and they've been putting water on this thing constantly, pretty much safe distance away, but pretty much using the ladder trucks and getting the water, the cannons from above, shooting down onto those buildings. We did see one person taken away on a stretcher on some type of a gurney. Julie Watts, our reporter on the scene, said that she pretty much can assume that it's smoke inhalation, that somebody was affected by the smoke at any rate, and that's why they had to take them away. She herself was seeing the smoke increase. As the fire got into the building, it became a different fire then. If it was just the gas line, that would be different, but the smoke you're seeing is really the structure fire that's happened close by. First of all, it was the corner building where that restaurant is, and then it's been working its way back down Parker Avenue a bit into more and more of the building. And as close as these buildings are, it's hard to differentiate, when one building stops and another starts. But that's what they're trying to get. They're trying to contain it to just that immediate building. But again, the corner there where the restaurant is, and you can see how intense those flames are, 30, 40 feet shooting into the air. One man who was an eyewitness was telling us that he just happened to be walking by that area, just got by the area, and then the explosion happened, and he was able to get by. He saw grandmother and a little girl, hopefully he thinks safely, get out of that area. The restaurant was apparently evacuated. We have some more video. Now we're told 4 buildings involved in this, but this is the Citizen app video that was first posted after the fire got started here. Police had set up a perimeter, but look how intense those flames are. This was when the gas line was initially hit after 1 o'clock this afternoon, and police had responded. The fire chief said they were there first. PG&E is now on scene. We've seen the crews trying to get to a valve of some kind underneath the street level, but what the crew, there's some more Citizen app video from a greater distance, but still you can tell how intense and how big those flames are. Again, the neighborhood, Geary and Parker, the Jordan Park area of San Francisco, and the inner Richmond. Very busy commercial area, but residential as well, because we can see the apartments that caught fire in that building where the restaurant is. But so many people have been comparing this to, oh my gosh, it's like San Bruno all over again. But the former mayor was reminding us, and Julie Watts, you're joining us. Remember, we were talking about how long it took. Jim Ruane told me it was 1 hour and 45 minutes for PG&E to get the gas off in San Bruno, and this fire started
right,
just
we're
after
going on
1
about
o'clock.
1 hour and 45.
Yep.
Right. So about the same amount of time here. We are actually just getting ready to interview a representative from PG&E who is out here. So momentarily we will get some answers to our questions. But what I can tell you is that the fire chief was saying, you know, PG&E is working as fast as they can. And certainly they had some trouble getting to the shutoff valve during the San Bruno explosion. So we will find out here momentarily if that is an issue with this fire. But yeah, certainly they have not turned off the gas yet. We are still seeing these flames shoot stories into the air, and the smoke continues to get thicker and thicker out here as we see more and more buildings on fire. What we're trying to determine right now is why they have not been able to turn this off. You mentioned earlier, Alan, that you know, there was some talk about putting in some automatic shutoff valves. Sir, I'm here with a representative from PG&E. Can we ask you a few questions?
Sure. I won't be able to have much beyond what we know right now, but sure thing.
Okay, so what is your name?
My name's Paul. Last name's Doherty.
Paul Doherty. So we were just wondering, hypothesizing about why it's taking so long to turn the gas off. Can you give us some perspective? Why haven't you been able to turn this gas off yet?
Well, I can't speculate on that right now. It's an active situation, and our crews are on scene working with first responders to make the area safe and to get the situation under control. But as soon as we learn more, we'll be able to provide you with that information. We do know that our initial reports indicate that this is a third-party incident involving a construction project.
So do you have any idea how long it took your crews to get out here today after the initial report of the fire?
I'd have to get back to you with more information on that.
Okay. Can you tell us anything about the automatic shutoff valves? You know, after San Bruno, there was a lot of talk about automatic shutoff valves. Can you tell us how that works? What would an automatic shutoff valve do in a situation like this?
Well, automatic shutoff valves allow the ability to remotely shut off the flow of gas. I don't have information regarding this specific situation and whether or not there are those valves associated here, so I'd have to get back to you with information on that.
So presumably, though, if there was one of those valves located here, PG&E would have been able to have already shut this off from a remote location, and we do see crews out here right now. How many crews are out here working on figuring out how to turn off this gas?
We have a number of crew employees out here right now working. I don't have a specific number for you to share right now, but like I mentioned, as soon as we can get more information for you, we'll be able to provide that.
Can you give us some context as to what it entails to actually turn this gas off? I mean, what do your crews physically have to do to get those flames to stop shooting out of the ground?
Sure, there are a few different approaches you can take. Involves trenching and squeezing off the line. There are valves that we would also be able to locate and turn the gas off that way as well.
And would those be valves above ground valves? It really is just a matter of opening up a box and turning it off?
So I'd have to get more information in the specific location of where those valves are with our crews who are on site here who are actively working on this, and I can get that information for you as soon as possible.
You talked talked about trenching, and we did actually see some construction equipment coming through here after the fire started. Is that something that they might be doing here? And by trenching, you mean, I assume, digging holes and then getting down at the lines and just pinching off the line?
That's correct. That's correct.
So we saw some construction crews out there. Is that something that you would do in this situation?
Well, there are some construction crews on site right now that are trenching and looking at what we're able to options that we can to get the flow of gas stopped.
Is there any ETA on when you might get these flames out? You might get the gas turned off?
Don't have an ETA for you right now, but as soon as we are able to go back into the scene, we'll try and get an update for you, and we can come right back.
Can you give us an idea on whether or not you are focused on trenching or remote shutoff or finding a valve? I mean, do you know at this point how best to stop this gas, how best to turn it off?
So again, I'm gonna have to come back to you with more information on that. We're actively looking into this, and as soon as we know more, we'll be able to get you that information.
Okay, well, I do want to let you get back there so you can get us those details. But wait, before you leave, though, I'm sorry, I apologize to this to you, but Alan, I do want to send it over to you, and I want to know, do you have any questions that you'd like us to ask PG&E?
Well, Julie, I'm wondering if he knows what type of a gas, how big a line is this? This seems to be bigger than just a residential line.
Yeah, so Alan, our anchor, was asking, do you know what type of line this is, how big it is? It seems to be bigger than just a residential line.
As soon as we get more information, I don't have that information right now, but as soon as I'm able to get that, we'll be able to relay that back for you.
All right, well, thank you so much for your time. Anything else before we let him go, Alan?
No, Julie, that's great. Let's let him get some info, and I'm sure we'll get him back here and get some details.
Thank you so much. We appreciate the information.
We appreciate it.
And you know, Alan, I think we can probably get some folks back at the station to start doing a little digging and to look at the lines, because I'm pretty sure that it's public record that we probably could figure out with a little digging here exactly what type of line this is. So we certainly will get some folks looking into that, and we'll get you some more information as soon as we can.
Yeah, Julie, you know, I'm just...
well, you know, I want to turn you... Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. I'm looking at the video from Chopper 5, the live picture coming in, and, you know, I'm remembering what Chief White said about, you know, they're just trying to surround and drown this thing, and you know, the fire is spreading. It's spreading into the building. It's getting further and further into the building, going down Parker, it appears. So I don't know, you know, this thing, I don't know if they're ordering more evacuations, but it doesn't appear that they're getting this thing contained.
I will tell you, from this perspective, it does not look like it is getting contained out here. And I can tell you the smoke continues to intensify and increase, which to me indicates that there is more fuel burning, that there are more buildings going up in flames. We did, you know, sort of hypothesize before we spoke to the chief that that's exactly what they were doing. And I mean, it makes perfect sense. You can't put a fire out when the fuel keeps coming, when the gas is still fueling these flames. So all they can do is hope to drench the surrounding buildings to prevent this from spreading. And they did a very good job. I would say we were out here for about an hour or so, and they were keeping that fire contained to just you know, close to that one building. But certainly now, and you have a better perspective than I do from up in the air, it does appear that this fire is continuing to spread. They can only douse so many buildings in this area. I'm going to go ahead and put this mask on as we're getting some wind blowing our way. And if we could, Chris Bistro is behind the camera. Let's turn around and focus on the flames from what you can see. I want to show you, or I mean, I guess honestly you can't really see, but I want to show you just how thick the smoke is. At this point, it has pretty much completely eclipsed the flames.
Oh, absolutely. It's, wow, that's a great perspective, and I'm glad you have the mask. I was hoping that you would be able to do that. But from what you had said, Julie, and what I just saw from the Chopper 5 camera, and not only is the fire spreading further into the building down Parker, but it appears the restaurant building, which the chief said was 3300 Geary, it looks like it's gotten into the building next to that restaurant on Geary as well, because I was seeing some of the smoke coming out of the windows. That building next to the restaurant seems to be maybe 3 stories tall, and there was smoke coming out of the top floor of that. So there's a good perspective of how the smoke is being carried down the neighborhood. Again, this Geary and Parker, so it's Jordan Park is the area of San Francisco, and I'm sure for many folks in the city, they're now able to see this smoke. Julie, you had said the wind was picking up, and we can kind of tell that that breeze is now picking up that smoke and pushing it further into the city of San Francisco.
Yeah, the smoke is definitely getting thicker out here, and I can tell you it's been sort of we've had off and on scattered showers out here, but certainly the wind is picking up, and it's starting to feel like one of those San Francisco summers, you know, a little damp and cloudy, and certainly a little breezy out here. It's interesting. I have to tell you, this fire hits a little close to home. I've lived in the outer Richmond for the better part of the last decade, and Geary, this area, the inner Richmond. We spend a lot of time here. We walk up and down these streets. There's a lot of local businesses. I can only imagine how much damage this is going to do to the surrounding area. It's hard to watch. You know, we cover San Bruno. It's always hard to cover these types of stories, but it really hits home when it's your own neighborhood.
Julie, you and I both saw that there was one person taken out on a stretcher, and we kind of thought it must have been the smoke. Have you seen anyone else who's been affected?
No, you know, we haven't. Although, I mean, are you looking at our pictures down here from the ground, Alan? Right now, it is, we have just feet of visibility in front of us. All of a sudden, the smoke got very, very thick. No, I haven't seen anyone else that looks like they've been having health problems. But, you know, I think that is one of the blessings in the situation, at least to our knowledge. There were no fatalities and no significant injuries, at least from the last press briefing. Certainly, as the smoke gets thicker and there are still people in the area, we are actually moving back for our own safety right now. I don't know if you can see our camera, but we're trying to move back from the fire line because the smoke is getting so thick. And we don't know exactly what the situation was when we did see the video of that woman being taken away, or that person rather being taken away on a stretcher. But you know, presumably it certainly could have been smoke. We're only assuming that because at that point the fire chief had said there were no injuries related to the fire and no one was missing at that time.
Well, yes, and when she talked to you folks out there, she was pretty optimistic, and it seemed, you know, at the time to us too, that there was reason for optimism that they had kind of contained this thing. It was just the one building that had burned, but we didn't see flames really coming from that building. But now it appears to have spread quite a bit into an adjacent building, if not buildings. There we can kind of see, Chopper 5 is showing us there's smoke coming from the roof of the building next to the one we've been talking about that's on the corner. And so, you know, they've got ladders on up to the roofs of adjacent buildings, but most of the firefight in terms of the water is coming from a great distance away. Until they get the gas line shut off and the source of that, you know, fuel under control, they can't really move in and do anything much about the structure fire.
Right, and you know, the positive aspect in all of this, considering that we are still seeing these flames, going on over an hour since this fire started, is the fact that at least right now there are no known injuries. You think back to the wildfires, you think back to San Bruno, and just the tragedy of those situations. We're looking at these flames, this gas-fueled flames once again here, and almost miraculously, at least for now, we are not aware of any injuries, any fatalities, and at last word of any missing people.
No, that's absolutely the best news. The 8 construction workers all accounted for, because at one point earlier they had said that there were some members of that crew that were unaccounted for, but everybody appears to be out of there and safe, including the backhoe operator. Because that's what appears to have happened. For those of you just joining us, is construction crews been out there a couple of days working to get some fiber optic equipment is what the fire chief said was going on out there. One of the workers down the street said she'd noticed the crews had been out there for a couple of days doing this work. One of the lanes on Geary had been closed off, and here's another view from a different camera of ours from Channel 5. And that shows you a different perspective. You can see how high those flames are shooting, well above the buildings, well above the trees. And that's what we were seeing in terms of not just the gas line, which is under pressure. So that's why we saw the flame shooting so high from the gas line itself. But now also the structure there on the corner and possibly an adjacent building, if not buildings, have caught fire as well. The smoke, as Julie has been saying, has intensified quite a bit. The breeze has picked up. It's onshore, so it's blowing the smoke more into San Francisco, the east, blowing west to east. And firefighters there on the roofs of some of these adjacent buildings, but it's pretty clear they're not fighting it from up there. They're not getting water on it from up there. But that's one of the trucks they're using. Get that ladder high up into the air above the flames, above the smoke, and shoot water down on top of it. And you see the construction sign there with the arrows. That's part of the crew's equipment that was working in the street. That hasn't gone up since the firefight started, which was 1 o'clock. We're coming up on pretty close to 2 hours now, almost 2 hours, that this has been going on. And again, we've kind of been asking the question, why hasn't PG&E been able to get the gas turned off here? We have seen PG&E crews out in the middle of Geary Street. They've started digging with some backhoes themselves, and then even hand crews with shovels digging around. They presumably know that there's got to be a valve close to that. There's got to be a shutoff that they can get to. But at this point, obviously, there's not one of these automatic shutoff valves that became such an issue after the San Bruno explosion. And PG&E had a lot of questions about its pipelines and why that didn't get shut off. San Bruno, well, that gas continued spewing out for 1 hour and 46 minutes, according to the former mayor. So it was quite some time. And here we are almost going on to 2 hours here, where this has started in San Francisco. And as Julie said, the good news is that
Alan,
Go ahead, Julie.
I was going to say, Alan, as you heard when I was interviewing the representative from PG&E, I asked about those automatic shutoff valves they had talked about putting in after San Bruno, and he didn't know if there were any in the area. He also didn't know exactly how they were going to be handling this. We did see some dozers come through, and they said they might be trenching, digging up the ground to try to pinch off one of the gas lines to stop the flow. It's not clear where the shutoff valve is, and I have to say I was a little surprised that they didn't know. I would have to think that there have got to be public records, or certainly PG&E records, which show where all the automatic shutoff valves are, and where the valves would be, the manual valves would be to shut off gas in a certain area. So I'm sure we'll be learning more in the days to come following this, and there will be a lot more questions as to why, once again, this many years later, is it taking over 2 hours to shut off gas. This is, the middle of San Francisco, in the middle of, we're just outside Silicon Valley, and you would think that there would be some sort of online map of where the valve is, and it should be relatively easy to shut off.
Well, you would think that they have to have.
You
would think that they have to have some sort of schematics, that they have to have something. But what we're seeing, let me tell you what we can see from Chopper 5, Julie, since you don't have this perspective. But there are crews in the middle of Geary, and there are backhoes being used. There's some big heavy-duty jackhammers that they're using. Ground crews, well, the men and women have shovels. They're digging there. They did dig this big hole, and it looked like maybe they were getting close to something. But just now, as you were talking, I was observing them, and they're kind of making the hole bigger. They're moving back, and I don't want to say they don't know what they're doing, but they don't know exactly where to look, is what it appears to be. It's kind of like when your dog goes out in the backyard and buries a bone and goes back, a week or two later, and I put it here somewhere, and I keep digging a trench, and it's got to be here. And that's what they're thinking, I'm sure, is it's got to be here somewhere where we can, as you said, pinch off this line and shut it off.
And I'm struck by how dangerous it is for those PG&E workers. I mean, my heart just goes out to those workers and their families. You have to imagine, they're just feet from this natural gas and this huge explosion, and one wrong move could put their lives in danger.
True.
So, I really do, my heart goes out to them right now. They're risking their lives to try to turn this off, which really does just lend to the thinking that, there really should be some sort of automatic shutoff valve so that you don't have to send crews out here into harm's way, and that you can immediately turn these things off. But certainly there is a lot of information that we don't know. PG&E and the fire crews are the experts, and we're just sitting here sort of on the sidelines watching this saying, gosh, you would think that there's got to be a way to turn this off in under 2 hours.
Right, and again, as you said, we're no experts, and I'm not trying to sit up here and pontificate that they should know they should be doing that. PG&E wants nothing more than to get this thing turned off and solve this thing and get the fire out and make sure everybody stays safe, because as we saw with the building, it's spreading.
Right, and as we can tell down here from the ground, although I will say the smoke has cleared up just a little bit, at least where we are. The wind may have shifted a bit, helping the situation down here. But yeah, as you see more and more buildings go up in flames, the longer this gas is flowing, the longer those flames are shooting into the air, the more likely it is we're going to see the damage spread.
You know what struck me, the two eyewitnesses that you talked to, Julie, I think both of them were named Michael, coincidentally, but, you know, there didn't sound like a lot of panic in their voice when they described, you know, really getting away from this thing.
Yeah, and you know what was interesting? The first gentleman, the first Michael that we spoke with, said that he heard a sort of whooshing noise, like a lot of air. In fact, the first thing he said is it sounded like a plane, which I thought was interesting because back when we were covering San Bruno, the early comments from witnesses was they thought it was a plane crash. They thought because San Bruno is so close to SFO and in that flight path, they thought it was a plane crash. But you know, that might have been a blessing in disguise. We're hearing now that they're, you know, all the construction crew in the area were able to escape because that whooshing was so loud. It was an indication, at least according to Michael, that that something was wrong and people started running. So that may have actually saved the lives of, you know, bystanders in the area. He did mention though, and I, you know, Alan, I can't stop thinking about it. He mentioned a grandma and a little girl walking just behind him right before he heard that. And I know you and I both have been thinking about them, hoping that they did get out. And again, at this point, there are no reports of any injuries or missing people. We did see one person being taken away on a stretcher. We don't know if that was due to the actual explosion or smoke inhalation or something after the fact. But so far, you know, it seems almost miraculous that nobody was hurt when you look at the size of this explosion and those flames just shooting stories into the air.
Yeah, now we're told, you know, I'm seeing 4 buildings they're saying are involved in this to different degrees, obviously. But, you know, when you talk about nobody hurt, I'm thinking about that first building there at the corner, the one with the restaurant on the ground floor and what appear to be apartments, residences above. The fact that everybody got out of there is astounding, and it's just a miracle. It's fantastic that that they did that. If they were indeed open, I mean, it would have been lunchtime, just after 1 o'clock, certainly. But 4 buildings now involved in this, and Julie, you're the weather expert too. In addition to being a great reporter, you're the weather expert. This seems to be an onshore breeze, what little breeze there is, and it's pushing it more towards, you know, downtown San Francisco.
Yeah, I can definitely say this, it is an onshore flow right now, or an onshore breeze, in that it's moving from west to east. And in fact, I don't know if you've taken our shot right now, but we have police officers handing out smoke masks to all the other folks out here on the scene, because that smoke is just sort of blowing right at us. They moved the primary media briefing location to one of the side streets to, I think, avoid some of this smoke. We, of course, do have our masks out here. We are taking care of ourselves and making sure that we are being safe.
Absolutely. Fantastic. All right, Julie, I'm going to take a break from you for just a second. I know you're going to stay there and stay on this. Great perspective on the ground. On the phone, joining me now is Richard Cooperwicks. Richard, did I get that right? Is Richard with us?
Richard's with you.
Hey, Richard Cooperwicks, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, I want to get that right. You are an independent pipeline expert?
Yes, I am.
Great. Thanks for this time of yours and the perspective. And I kind of want to ask you, when you look at this and what's going on, surprising to you? Is this a situation that could happen, you know, anywhere in the city? I want to ask you about the automatic shutoff valves and all of that. But this type of a line, high pressure?
Well, it's probably not a low pressure distribution, probably a higher pressure distribution system, given the length of the flames and all that. It's probably a gas distribution system, like that may be obvious, but it's definitely not like a high-pressure gas transmission pipeline like San Bruno. That was a pipeline rupture of a transmission system, a whole different animal.
And that line in San Bruno was huge.
Yes, it was.
And great pressure, under great pressure.
Well, it was a lower pressure, relatively speaking, less than 400 pounds for a transmission system. This is a much lower pressure. It appears to be a gas distribution system, but it looks fairly typical for a gas distribution system failure, where people are tending to indicate that probably it was damaged and failed from third-party damage work.
Well, that's what the police chief, the fire chief was saying earlier at her news conference, is that as a construction crew, PG&E says it's a third party. They hit the line, which compromises it, then the explosion and fire. But the issue, of course, comes up with automatic shutoff valves. And of course, we lay people talk about, well, why don't they have these? But is it that easy an issue to install those things?
Not for gas distribution systems. we argued, and I actually testified in some of the San Bruno hearing for automatic shutoff valves for transmission systems. For gas distribution, you can automate some valves, but it's very difficult because the nature of the operation, it's a gas distribution grid. And so, you got to have gas coming from more than one direction in a distribution system. And it's very difficult to make automatic shutoff or even remotely shut off valves because it's a complex network. And so usually they're manual, and you may or may not be able to get to them. They should have a list of designated emergency valves to be closed, but it depends on the situation. Here, this is a fairly dramatic fire and multiple dwellings are involved. And so the operator, PG&E, probably is trying to figure out where do we go in to shut this off without, causing major shutdown in other parts of the gas distribution grid.
Well, that appears to be, from what we can see from Chopper 5 from above, that appears to be what they're trying to do. They dug this big hole, and now they're making the hole bigger. They're working, further and further out from it, trying to trace the line back, I guess, to maybe find a shutoff.
Well, it could be as simple. Again, these are kind of situational specific. It may be the nature of the disaster that's going on here. It's bigger, so that valves that are closer they can't get to, or they may be involved or damaged. Mm-hmm. And so it's not unusual for them to try to figure out, rather than go out and shut out valves that might, let's say, shut off a hospital or something, as an example.
Sure.
It might be quicker just go dig up near a line that we can get to. So they'll look and figure out which areas of their grid, given this tragedy that's evolving, they'll let it burn. The fire department will try to control the fire to minimize damage to property, but the first priority is you let it burn and minimize the risk to people.
Okay, Richard, I'm going to correct myself here because Chopper 5 is kind of turned around, and now I have better perspective as to where they're digging and where the fire is, where the line is compromised. They dug this hole. They're actually expanding it, getting closer to where the line appears to have been broken and compromised.
Yeah, they're probably trying to get it cut off as close to where the holes are, or hole that's feeding this fire. But depending on the size of the line, they may need a valve. If it's small enough, they can actually crimp the pipe. But they have to get to the line. They have to get to where they're at. Now, let me be real clear here on the nature of distribution systems. Just shutting off a valve will not stop the flow of gas for quite some time because there's a lot of gas in the inventory of the pipe. So they're trying, they're going along here trying to figure out what's the best way to isolate this break that's feeding the flames to minimize the gas that's going to the flames.
So, okay, just again, a layman here, but I think most of us think of, oh, it's a gas line and it kind of works like a garden hose. The water only comes one direction. You're saying in a distribution system, gas is coming maybe from different directions.
Not maybe. More likely, it's coming from different directions. And you've got it. In layman's terms, it's more than one direction feeding this. And how do they shut it off? And the nature of natural gas, shutting off the valve will not stop the flow of gas right away. It has to de-inventory from the pipeline. And it can be quite a lot of gas inventory there.
And tell me about sort of the neighborhood. I mean, do people in these adjacent buildings need to be concerned that, I mean, they're evacuated. Don't get me wrong. They did evacuate a 1-block radius. But is it possible there could be an explosion in a building because there's gas still in the lines?
It's hard. It's situational dependent. The fact that you got flames burning at the source of the failure, the first rule is you don't put the flames out. The gas that's being fed to the flame needs to be left burning. The fire department that's in incident command here will try to minimize the damage to other dwellings and property, but their first priority is to protect the people.
Sure. Sure, and I'm looking at this chopper live picture right now, and the backhoe that we have to assume caused the damage. I can't believe that thing isn't torched, but the building, adjacent to it is gone. And what I was kind of thinking of as you were describing the gas in the line is that, it has to burn. And I'm thinking, so does it take like the path of least resistance here, and that's where the break in the pipe is, and that's why we're seeing. Once it caught fire, that's where it's going to go.
Well, it'll depend, and it's a little iffy with, gas distribution system because it depends on the pressure. Is this coming from a main or a big service line feeding buildings? I think it's important, and this is why when it's burning, and if the fire department has reasonable control to limit the amount of property damage that's already occurred from spreading, then what you do is you let the gas flames fed fire burn, and then decide where best to isolate it so that you can control how long it will burn once you close the valves.
And so gas lines running down a street like this, Gary, it's a pretty major street, that would, I would think, would be kind of a main, part of the distribution system, Geary Street.
Probably has a big diameter gas main,
which
isn't going to be like 1 inch.
No, that's what I was thinking. I mean, the San Bruno line was huge, and this one is going to be much bigger than, say, people are used to seeing at their meter, coming in off the street.
In fairness, and I don't mean to interrupt you, I apologize.
No, that's okay.
If this is a larger diameter gas main, part of the complication on how quickly to respond and get the source of gas supply coming from more than one direction isolated is the pipeline operator has to look, okay, what can I do? My first reaction is it's already burning. I'm going to let it burn. I don't want to be shutting gas off that could do some damage to other people who need the gas. Okay, so it's not a yes or no answer. So the public may think, go shut this gas line system off right away, and that's not quite fair to the operator. The network's more complicated than that.
Well, and the residual effects afterwards, after they do get this off, this is, it's going to affect, obviously, this neighborhood and big parts of the city probably for a while.
Well, and it'll depend. Again, they'll try to look at what's causing this. They'll pretty well ascertain how bad it is to the gas distribution system, and they can repair that fairly quickly once everything is under control. Once they've got the gas cut off, the flames have died out, the fire department will look at the triage area. They'll be able to decide, okay, now, PG&E, you can go in there and try to get your other gas lines repaired and decide how quickly. It's not going to happen in hours. It might be days.
No, and
how bad it is.
Well, I'm thinking about people who, how San Francisco, it's all mixed use. You may have businesses who on the street level, but you've got people living in apartments and residences up above, and they can't just go back once the evacuation order is lifted and start trying to turn on their appliances again. It's cold at night. We're having some cold weather. They're going to want their heat back on and so forth. So they have to be very careful about that.
Completely understandable. And the first thing is PG&E won't put the gas back on until they've got it under control, properly repaired. I just spent some time in Lawrence, Massachusetts, where they had a couple towns lose their gas, and that took them many months to get that back in service. So this won't be this situation here, I don't think. But yes, the first thing is you to do things safely to protect lives, and it may take time to figure out what's going on, how bad the damage is, but that's just the nature of the process.
Well, Richard, I really appreciate the insight. You've added a great deal to our understanding and knowledge of what's going on here, and thank you so much.
Very good. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Richard Cooperwitz, independent pipeline expert, actually did some testimony in court about the San Bruno explosion. So again, if you're just joining us, this is in the neighborhood of Geary and Parker in San Francisco, the Jordan Park neighborhood near the inner Richmond area, just east of that. This construction accident, crew that was working to put in some fiber optic equipment underground at Geary and Parker struck a gas line, and it appears to be a higher pressure line, according to Richard, our expert, pipeline expert, a higher pressure distribution line, which complicates things for PG&E trying to get this thing turned off, because as he was describing it, it isn't just like one line, picturing a garden hose, as I said, and you've got water flowing in one direction. A distribution system is bringing natural gas into the area from different areas, and then obviously, thus its name, distributes it into the city, into the neighborhood. So this is probably one of those lines, he says. And so that complicates matters in terms of trying to find it isn't just one valve. It could be several that they have to get to and turn off. And the last thing that they actually want is to see that fire go out before the gas is turned off. and the line is cleared of natural gas. All right, Julie Watts has been with us there on the scene for quite a while. You're able to take the mask off. The smoke, is it clearing it all for you?
It was until just as soon as you asked that question, it started getting a little thick once again. But yeah, we have been out here, we've been monitoring the fire. You know, it's interesting, Alan, I was thinking about this. One of my stories earlier today was PG&E's wildfire mitigation plan is due today to the court and to the PUC. So they've been very busy all day long sort of finalizing that wildfire mitigation plan. And then now here we are again with a stark reminder of San Bruno and questions about why they've not been able to turn the natural gas off in this fire for going on more than 2 hours now. Out here, as you've mentioned, and as you can see, the flames are still shooting stories into the air. The smoke is once again intensifying, and that of course indicates that the more smoke there is, the more buildings there are burning. It's interesting that you said, you know, in this case, until they get that gas turned off, they don't want the fire to come out. That's really interesting information. And in talking to PG&E earlier today, we asked, you know, do you know, is there an automatic shutoff valve here? There's a lot of talk about installing those following San Bruno. The PG&E representative we spoke with couldn't tell us one way or another. We also asked, you know, how are you going about trying to cut the gas in this situation? And they said there are lots of ways they could do it. They weren't sure how they were doing it in this situation, but as you mentioned, and we can see from Chopper 5, they've got dozers out there. They're trenching and hoping to pinch off the line. And then certainly there is the possibility there are some shutoff valves, but we have to assume that if it was as easy as turning a valve to shut this thing off, it would have been off within the last 2 hours.
Well, and Julie, you were talking about the danger here. You know, I got kind of, my perspective got turned around with Chopper 5, but now this picture I'm seeing gives me the better idea. And as I was telling Richard, our expert, I originally thought they dug this hole and they were working away from the fire, the gas line where it was compromised and broken. They're actually working closer to it, which is even more dangerous. They're putting water almost directly onto the asphalt, maybe trying to keep the asphalt from melting close to where that fire is burning
onto
underground.
The line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, and Alan, you know, we mentioned it earlier. I have to say it again. My heart goes out to those PG&E workers and to their families who know they're out here right now working on this. I mean, think about how close they are. We are keeping a safe distance back and sort of being overcome by the smoke. I can't imagine what those poor PG&E workers are going through right now, knowing that they are so close to the source of this explosion, to the source of the gas, trying to figure out, risking their lives to try to save the lives of others. It does strike me that. Go ahead, Alan.
No, that's why I was thinking. My immediate assumption was, oh, they're going to work their way away from the source of the fire, and they're actually going towards it, which we're all, you know, hoping and praying they stay safe, of course, and that they can get this thing out and do it the safe way, the correct way, and that the fire department now seems to have a better handle on this fire. It was spreading for a while. 4 buildings are involved now there at the corner of Geary and Parker. But yeah, everybody's doing a fantastic job. You know, we're often looked at as Monday morning quarterbacks, and you know, we're doing the best we can to analyze the situation here with the information. You know, the gentleman from PG&E didn't have a lot of details. Hopefully, when you get him back, he'll have some answers to your questions there about the valves and so forth, and getting it off, and the timing of it all. Because the more we all know, the more we learn, and the more we can understand what's going on.
Right, and I think it is a good opportunity, a good time to take the opportunity to remind folks that in this situation, at least as far as we know so far, there are no missing people and no injuries or fatalities that we are aware of. And just looking at these pictures, you see the size of the explosion and the height of those flames, and the fact that there are no known injuries at this time is nothing short of miraculous. We think back to San Bruno. It was just heartbreaking as you heard about those stories, the injuries, the deaths in that situation, and you can't help but compare the situation today, and it really is. I think we were all very happy to hear that at least so far there are no known injuries or missing people, though we did see one person being taken away on a stretcher, and it wasn't clear if that was fire related or smoke related. But as we've been seeing out here for the last few hours, the smoke has been coming, sort of billowing, gets very, very thick at times to the point where we just can't see a few feet in front of us, and then completely clears up again. And right now, actually, the wind has sort of shifted a bit, and we are seeing the smoke clear away.
Well, Julie, thanks, and I appreciate that insight, because from Chopper 5 and now this picture, I assume this is from our Sutro Tower camera, and we could tell as fast as that fire started to spread into other buildings, and that's why the smoke was increasing, and Julie was talking about that. But it appears that the fire department has actually gotten a better handle on the spread of this thing into other buildings. And the main building there at the corner of Geary and Parker, which is where the restaurant is, it appears that the fire department is getting more water on it. They're using those high-powered water cannons, you know, at the top of those ladder trucks. And also the building across the street, across Parker, which is the H&R Block office, that was burning as well, although I've seen firefighters on the roof of that building. It appears, you know, all this water is having an effect now, a positive effect. And so, you know, there's going to be a lot of damage to these buildings if that one on the corner where the restaurant isn't destroyed. But, you know, they're able to get a better handle on it. That's why the smoke is turning white. You know, they're able to decrease the amount of smoke. The flames aren't spreading. But again, the main flame is still coming from the distribution line, we've been told, PG&E line underneath Geary and Parker. It's right at the corner. There was a crew that third party, they say construction crew, private party, out doing some work trying to put in some fiber optic equipment underneath the street, and there's a bit of the backhoe that was involved in the initial probably break of that line. All right, we have the fire chief talking to some neighbors, talking about the impact of this thing, and it's going to have some lasting impact through the night. Let's listen. Oh, I'm sorry. They're relaying information to me. The latest coming from the chief is that the neighbors are going to be out of their homes for the night. So that's brand new. We were told that there would be another news conference some point this afternoon, but they're not waiting for that. They're releasing the information to the neighbors that they need to make some plans, because they're not going to be allowed in their homes. But again, this started, you know, a little after 1:08 was the time I was told that the first call came in that the line had been broken. There was a construction crew that hit a gas line, and that the neighborhood was evacuated, the chief said, within a 1-block radius. So I'm assuming the word she's putting out to the neighbors who are not going to be allowed back in is within that 1-block radius of the fire that's burning at Geary and Parker. Now, officially, what they're saying is that this fire is contained. Surround and drown was the chief's phrase. So apparently they feel they have surrounded this thing and contained it. It obviously is not out, as we see. PG&E crews have been out there for a while now, digging into the street on Geary. They dug a pretty sizable hole using some heavy equipment, and then they got ground crews in there with shovels trying to dig along the pipeline itself, and they've been gradually working that hole bigger and bigger towards that fire. I'm now told it's a total of 5 buildings that are involved in this. But again, the fire may be contained, but it's certainly not out by any stretch of the imagination. They're putting water on that backhoe. The one that they're dousing is the one that apparently construction crews were working when they hit the gas line. You know exactly how that happened, why they didn't have the schematics, why they may have misread them, whatever. We're going to have to find that out in the coming days. But at this point, fire crews are just trying to let this fire burn and burn until PG&E can safely get this pipeline closed off. It's a distribution line, which, as our expert said, complicates matters quite a bit, because it's not just one line, it's just not a small line, it's a higher pressure line, and so that complicates things. And because it's a distribution line, gas is coming in from all different directions and feeding into this. So they want to keep it burning. They want to burn that gas off. The last thing they want is to put it out and still have the gas spewing in. All right, we're going to go to Ken Bastida now. You've got some information on permits there, Ken?
Yeah, hi, Alan. I'm at the live news desk, and our staff was able to access some of this permit information from the San Francisco City Public Works Department. Apparently, this is an MCI project, MCI Metro Verizon, and they are installing fiber optic cable between Geary and, Geary between Emerson and Parker. And this is a permit that was issued on January 29th, 2018. by the city itself. People may be wondering why it's taking so long to turn off the gas. And I checked one of the websites, utility websites, and it says that especially cities of San Francisco that have a little history, that go back over 100 years, some of these utility lines have actually moved. They've been moved, streets have been moved, sidewalks have been moved. Maps are not always updated to a precision. And actually, the utilities consider anything within 4 feet of either direction as being close enough to being accurate. So it doesn't take much to hit one of these things. You could be off by 4 feet and think you're in the right place, but go straight down on top of a gas line and rupture it, as we've seen. The other part of this is that you may not be able to access a valve. It may be too close to the fire itself to access it, or it may be in an unknown location, because maps have changed for so many years in cities like New York and Boston and San Francisco. Older cities, they actually have moved sidewalks back, moved buildings back, moved streets in different locations, and the utilities are buried down there somewhere. They have an idea where they think they are, but they're not always exactly where they should be. So we may be running into one of those situations with this particular effort to find a valve to shut this thing off. And you mentioned, Alan, also that this was a distribution line which is feeding several other lines, so it may add to further confusion there. You may have multiple utilities stacked on top of each other. You may have gas under water. You may have water under electrical. So all of that has to be pulled apart. It's like a giant spider web to get to the right line, to find the right valve, to shut it off, to turn that fire off.
Ken, I was thinking about what you said about maybe as much as 4 feet off, because, you know, we were seeing PG&E crews dig this hole there in Geary, and then they started expanding it. And so I'm thinking they're in the same boat. You know, wait a minute, it says it's here, but it could be. They've been working closer and closer to the source of these flames.
Yeah, and if you've ever been to the San Francisco Public Works Department, it dates back into the 1800s. And some of these maps have obviously not been updated. Some have been changed. This is part of the infrastructure problem that the entire country is going through right now, to some aspect. But here's the thing: if PG&E tells you when you call 811 in your backyard that there's a gas line here, they'll come out and mark it for you, and you dig 5-6 feet away and you hit their gas line, that's PG&E's problem, because it's not where they told you it was. Now, if you hit it and you're just digging around, it's your problem, and you're on the hook. In this case, it would be MCI. We don't know who's at fault with this thing, but it would be MCI Verizon who could be liable for the damage. And you can see you've got multiple buildings involved now, and street closures and all that other stuff.
I was thinking as you said that, one line on top of the other. Ken, I was always told if you bury anything, always put the water on top, because if you hit something when you're digging, you want to hit the water. You don't want to hit electric. You don't want to hit gas.
Okay, that's probably a good tip. Next time I build a house, I'll remember that one. But yeah, I mean, you can see there have to be 24 guys down there with shovels right now trying to figure out where this valve is, and they think, based on maps, that they know where it might be, but they could be several feet away. There are utility workers that'll tell you they dig down to locate a valve, and it's nowhere to be seen. It's completely moved. It's in a different direction completely, 20, 30 feet away. Nobody ever updated the maps. It was a clerical error, whatever. But it's not an exact science. You can't see it. Oftentimes, Alan, what they'll do, especially with a gas line, is they will bury a metal thread, like a wire, alongside of it, so they can actually X-ray down in through the asphalt and find that gas line. Because oftentimes these gas lines are not metal. They're of a plastic or a nylon material, and they don't show up on an X-ray. So sometimes they'll bury a steel line alongside of it so they can find it. But that's more modern times. You got to remember, streets of San Francisco go back to the 1850s.
I remember doing a story with our Wilson Walker where we went down into the sewers, and I couldn't believe how old those were, so the other infrastructure, not maybe that old, but yeah, you're right. This stuff goes way, way back. And you know, I was saying to Julie Watts earlier, I think we want to jump to a conclusion like, why don't they just turn it off like it's, you know, a valve of a hose? And it's not that simple, not that easy. And these guys are putting themselves in great danger, the firefighters and the PG&E workers. All right, Ken Bastida with the latest there on the permit info, telling us that it's MCI Metro Verizon project. The fire chief had said they were putting in some fiber optic equipment underground. An eyewitness said she had seen them working in the street for a couple of days now, but that backhoe there at the corner, that small little bobcat they call it, seems to be what is responsible for hitting the gas line. A distribution line, as our pipeline expert said, complicates matters because it isn't just a single line that comes into your house and into your gas meter. This is a distribution line. Sources come from all different areas, and of course it distributes it and goes out in different areas. So, you know, it's not so simple as just turning off the hose type of thing. So, again, if you're just joining us, this breaking news started in the city of San Francisco in the Jordan Park neighborhood, which is a little east of the inner Richmond, but it's at Geary and Parker. The fire chief has said they evacuated a 1-block radius. As far as we know, there's nobody injured, nobody hurt in all of this. Everybody got out of the buildings. The 8 construction workers who were part of this fiber optic project, we're told, are all accounted for. They are all safe. We did witness one person on a gurney. We were led to believe that might be someone who's suffering from smoke problems, breathing problems. So we'll check on that. But that would be the only person we know of that has been hurt in all of this. But that one building there on the corner of Geary and Parker, that's the one that's 3300 Geary. That's the one that is home to the restaurant, the Hong Kong Lounge 2 restaurant. There were apartments above it, what looked to be apartments on the second floor. That is badly damaged, if not a total loss. That is the backhoe that construction crews were working when they hit this gas line this afternoon, shortly after lunch, a little after 1 o'clock. And the 1-block radius area evacuated. So thank goodness, we're told nobody is injured, nobody's been hurt, other than the one person we believe with smoke inhalation. But 5 buildings now total involved in this, and at one point it looked like there was quite a bit of smoke and flames were spreading to other buildings. The fire chief says that they believe they have this thing contained. It is certainly not controlled, which is a whole different definition, but it is contained as far as they are concerned. And there's the hole that PG&E crews have dug. They're searching for a valve. They're trying to pinch off the line, get some kind of closure on this pipe and get the source of the fire, the fuel, get it turned off. But when we were talking to our pipeline expert, he was telling us that the last thing you want to do is get the fire out before they get the gas turned off. That creates a whole different dangerous situation. So right now they want to burn that gas off, kind of let it flare, if you will, as long as they can keep the fire from spreading, into the neighborhood. And at this point, fire crews say they've done that. They have gotten it contained to the 5 buildings that are affected. But again, the good news is that nobody has been hurt in this. But the whole issue comes up about automatic shutoff valves. Our pipeline expert said it's really, it's much more complicated than just retrofitting these things, especially a distribution system, higher pressure lines, sources from different areas. So it isn't a very easy thing to do. But certainly they'll be looking at that in the coming weeks. But fire crews on the scene, police, of course, traffic is affected in that neighborhood of Jordan Park. Muni service has been affected. I am told that there are a couple of bus lines, the 38 and the 38 Rapid, have been rerouted to Anza off of Geary Street, of course, but onto Anza. So there is still Muni service, but it has been affected. We're told that no buses were in the immediate area anyway when the explosion happened and the fire started. So that also some good news. But again, this has been going on for since 1:08, so almost 2.5 hours, coming up on 2.5 hours now. Went up to a 3-alarm fire, 5 buildings involved. But the big question here is, and we see the crews, they've got this thing, they've got people on it, they've got PG&E workers in heavy equipment there on the ground. They've got people with shovels out there trying to find a way to get this thing turned off. There you see the firefight. This is the way it's been. This is the way it's been since it first started. They got the big ladder trucks out there, the high-power water cannons, and they're trying to get water down onto the top of this thing to keep it from spreading to the adjacent buildings. But you see the smoke coming from the building next door to the main building that's been burning. So now they are actually, I can see the firefighters on the roof with fire hoses. That's the first time I've seen that since this fire started early this afternoon. Is they just have to fight it from a safe distance. PG&E crews also a safe distance away, but they are dangerously close to the source of this thing as they try to get to some sort of a valve, try to get to this line that was broken by that backhoe. Again, the workers, the construction workers, MCI Metro Verizon project is what the permit info calls for. And the eyewitness that talked to us said she had seen them out there for the past couple of days with a lane closed and crews out there digging into the street. But as Ken pointed out, you know, the map may say one thing, the schematic may say that you got a line here and it can be off, can be as much as 4 feet off. Things have been rerouted and moved around. And Julie Watts, our reporter, has been out there on the scene for us since this thing kind of first got started. And Julie, you've been a great help. What can you tell us? What's the latest?
You know what's interesting down here from our perspective, Alan, is the flames seem to be periodically shooting farther into the air. It's almost like there are bursts of gas coming through, pushing these flames higher and higher. And just now we're seeing a more significant plume of smoke rising up, but I will say the smoke on the ground has cleared out. The wind has died down a little bit here, and we are definitely still seeing those. Actually, the flames just periodically look like they are dying down. It looks like they might be getting a handle on this situation as we are chatting here live on the air, Alan. Can you see what I'm seeing? Do you see these flames sort of laying down right now?
I do.
It looks like we may be witnessing the gas being turned off as we speak.
Well, the other thing I can see, Julie, is
explosion,
firefighters are now on the roof. They're actually with fire hoses up there. That's the first time I've really seen them able to fight this fire that close. The proximity, it's just been, you know, the ladders and the high-powered cannons until now. So that also a good sign.
That's right. We're looking at, let's see, this started just after 1 o'clock. It's now 3:30, so 3.5 hours. It looks like I'm going to go out on a limb here and say they finally turned that gas off. So significant development here over just the last few minutes. You were watching live here as they are finally getting a handle on the gas situation. Now, of course, the questions begin. Why did it take 3.5 hours to turn that gas off so that firefighters could, in fact, get a handle on this situation? We've been speaking with PG&E crews and various inspectors throughout the day, and of course we'll be learning more about that as we continue on. But we do know that they were coming at this from different angles. You know, the PG&E representative we spoke with out here live mentioned that one of the possibilities was trenching, and you obviously saw crews out there trenching, digging holes in the ground to try to pinch off the line. So we don't know if that's how they were able to cut gas to the fire, or if they actually did find the cutoff valve. But the one question we've been asking is, what about the automatic valves? Yes, sir.
Right. Julie, I just want to be clear now. If it is true that they have gotten the source of this off, the fire has been burning for 2.5 hours now. 2.5 hours in San Bruno.
Oh, thank you for that correction.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's fine. It's San Bruno, though, the former mayor told us was 1 hour and 46 minutes. So, you know, that's 2.5 hours is a long time. And, you know, we are so grateful, as you said, that no major injuries, no one, maybe other than the one person who might have inhaled some smoke. We'll get that determined. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I cannot see the flames. I see firefighters on the rooftops closer than ever to fighting the fire in the buildings, especially because if the gas is off, then that problem's solved. But now we still have structure fires going.
Right, and certainly the crews will be out here fighting those structure fires, but it's a lot easier to take care of those fires when you don't still have those flames fueling and you're not worried about other structures catching fire from the gas. And certainly, I have to imagine from a safety perspective, everybody out here is much safer now that that gas has been shut off. And it will be interesting to find out exactly, I don't know that we have any information yet from PG&E on customers who will be impacted by the gas being turned off. So how wide-reaching this is, if they did just pinch a line right there in the immediate area, or if gas has been shut off to the neighborhood. In your interview earlier, Alan, I overheard him say that there were some concerns during San Bruno. They didn't want to turn off the gas because they were afraid of folks in the area who would lose access to their gas. And certainly, in the end, they pointed out that life and safety was much more important than losing gas to your home.
Absolutely. And what we have learned is that at the latest news briefing from the fire chief, which was about 3:30, and I'm now told that there will be another briefing at 4:30. They're going to try to do it every hour to update everybody. But at 3:30, Chief White was telling the neighbors that you've got to be prepared. You're going to be out of your homes at least tonight, if not longer than that, because this is going to have a domino effect, as I was talking to Richard, our pipeline expert, about, is that people can't just run back in, and it's a cold night. They're going to want to turn on their furnaces and so forth and have hot water, and you can't just do that.
Yeah. That actually is a really good point. I will tell you, I have been freezing standing out here, and I'm wearing layers. I can only imagine folks who are in the area who are not going to have gas tonight. It is certainly cold as we stand out here right now, and will only get colder as we make our way through the evening.
All right, Julie, I'm going to break away from you for a second because Ken Bastida joining us again, and I know they have set up some reunification sites. Is that right, Ken?
That's exactly right, Alan. And like you and Julie were discussing there, people are not going to be able to go home right away, and possibly not for the rest of the evening, maybe into tomorrow, because of the problem with relighting pilot lights, with getting gas pressures checked, with actually repairing that distribution site that was damaged with the backhoe. And all the other things that go along with getting an entire neighborhood back up and running with natural gas. So they are asking people who live in the area, and there are a lot of apartments, there's a lot of housing there. Some of this is near USF and the medical buildings. So a lot of people live in this neighborhood, and several blocks are affected, and we're assuming several hundred people will be affected. They're telling them to go to either St. Mary's Cathedral, and that's at Goff and Geary. Up there, they have opened their parish center, and they are effectively going to operate that as an evacuation site or reunification site. You'll be able to get information there on what to do, where to go, and how long this is going to last, and also meet up with family members, roommates, that kind of thing. The other site they're telling people to go is Mel's Diner. And see, I would pick Mel's Diner because then you could grab a hamburger and a milkshake and some fries and settle down a little bit, right? And just figure out what you're going to do. At least you won't be going hungry. So Mel's Diner along Geary and St. Mary's Cathedral. If you live in the area, that's where they're telling people to go and hook up, reunify with the people you live with or the people in your neighborhood, your families, their kids, parents coming home, kids coming home from school. All that stuff gets mixed up in a situation like this. And as you mentioned quite accurately, it's going to take a while. It may take 24 hours or more to get this neighborhood up and running again.
Yeah, Ken, I'm thinking St. Mary's Cathedral first, maybe light a candle, say a prayer of thanks that nobody was hurt, and then you can go to Mel's Diner.
And run on down to Mel's.
Right, there you go. All right, we are very great. Thank you, Ken. I appreciate that update and info, and we're being told no injuries reported, and we're very, very grateful that that happened. And here's a little bit of a timeline. I have a couple of times for you that are now specific, because 1:08 was when that fire was called out. That's when the backhoe, the operator, hit that gas line, and there was an explosion, and the flames that we've seen on Citizen app that were huge. And 3:36 is when PG&E successfully capped that gas distribution line. So 2.5 hours approximately, more or less. And that's a long time, but all things considered, if there was, and here's that Citizen app video I was telling you about. This gives us a great perspective of, this is pretty far away. This is a couple blocks away, and those flames are indeed, 30, 40 feet tall, and some of those buildings are 3 stories high, and flames are taller than the trees in those buildings as well. But again, firefighters got out there, they got water on it, they stayed away from it, they used the ladder trucks and the high-powered cannons to get water onto the buildings. Our pipeline expert Richard informed us that, you know, this is a distribution line, most likely. So it isn't just as easy as saying, oh, they can just turn off a valve and get it off like it's a water hose. It's not. It's a distribution line, which means gas comes from different directions and comes in and gets distributed out. And so it's coming from different sources, and it's going out to different sources. So it complicates things. And he also pointed out that the worst thing, the last thing that they wanted to do was put that fire out that was coming from the gas line itself, because then you have natural gas escaping, you know, into the air. And so if it's burning, you're burning it off. You're burning off the fuel, and they can handle that. What the fire department, of course, wanted to do was make sure that everybody was safe and contain the fire, you know, to the buildings that it did spread to. I'm told 5 buildings were affected. And Andrea Borba joining us now. She's also alive out there alongside Julie Watts. Andrea, what information do you have for us?
Well, we are waiting for a presser from the San Francisco Fire Department at this point, but take a look behind me. Just in the past few minutes, that gas main has been shut off, but you can still see that they are actively putting water onto several buildings near the corner of Geary and Parker here, where that explosion began. The flames, when we rolled up, were several stories high, at least 3 or 4. And people, there will be activity out here all night long, Alan. There's no doubt about that. The building across the street, that blue building with the H&R block, that appears to have some damage in the top floor. As you can see, that old Edwardian on the corner appears to be severely damaged, if not a total loss. There is a ton of San Francisco firefighters out here. They're putting water on this fire and the smoke from several different angles to make sure that it is fully out. Of course, we can still see some black smoke coming off the top of that old Edwardian, where there are some San Francisco firefighters right now. It looks like we may have a press conference in just a few minutes. I see the head of the Department of Building Inspection walking up at the moment, but they are not heading quite in front of the cameras just yet. But we do have, of course, a very active scene out here, a very scary scene. We came around the corner from USF where the students were being let out of class at that point, and you could see the panic in their eyes. They could see the smoke from USF clearly on top of Lone Mountain there. And you could see the flame as soon as you reach the crest of that hill. It looked very, very daunting. Again, we are waiting for an update, Alan, from SF Fire, exactly what the next steps are, whether or not any firefighters were injured trying to put this fire out while waiting for that gas main to be secured by Pacific Gas and Electric. Lots of questions at this point, Alan. As soon as we have some answers, we will bring them to you.
Andrea, just a quick observation, just, you know, as you were coming in closer and closer to where the fire was burning, you said witnesses at USF, and I'm just wondering, give me your perspective. I mean, were you stunned? Were you surprised by people as far away as you might have seen them stopping and looking, wondering what the heck is going on? Because this has been going on for 2.5 hours now, longer, and people from all over could see the smoke, if not the flames.
Exactly, Alan. You know, we're in a culture where all of us have 1, 2, if not more of these with a camera. They were all taking photos. They've all been tweeting. People 2.5 hours later, as I was coming here, they were still taking photos. And of course, people are taking photos now that the fire has died out, and we're just seeing smoke coming from that corner of Geary and Parker. But still a lot of stunned people. I can see behind my photographer, behind the police tape, there's a crowd of at least 100 people still watching all of this unfold right now.
All right, Andrea Borba giving us the very latest there from near where the fire is close as they can safely be. But as we've been pointing out, at 3:36, PG&E was able to successfully stop the flow of natural gas to that distribution line. A complicated process, certainly not as easy as some of us might believe, because sources are coming from different areas. But here's the map to give you an idea of where in the city this is happening. If you're not familiar, Geary and Parker is the intersection. Jordan Park is the neighborhood. You can see how close Park is there. University of San Francisco, USF. That's why Andrea was saying even witnesses as far away as USF standing outside, and students, I'm sure, coming out of class wondering what in the heck is going on in the neighborhood near them. Well, here's what we can tell you. At 1:08, a fire was called in because a construction crew that had been working for a couple of days, apparently, in the street there at Geary and Parker, a crew working for MCI Metro Verizon was out there digging underground. They were installing some fiber optic equipment. As we look from Chopper 5, that water cannon from the top of that ladder truck is still getting water onto those 5 buildings that are affected. Fire Chief White, well, there's still some small flames burning. So they haven't, again, they've got this thing contained. It's not controlled, but the main fire from the gas line is out as they work now on structure fires. And obviously they'll be working hot spots in that building for a while. But they haven't even been able to get into that building for this whole time. They've been working adjacent buildings, rooftops, as close as they could safely be. But again, what I was going to say is Chief White, when she gave the media briefing earlier, called the term she used was surround and drown. So all they could do is surround this thing and then just flood water on it as much as they could possibly get onto it. And it's been nonstop. It's been nonstop. I saw at one point I counted 4 of those high pressure cannons firing down onto the roofs of the buildings. And again, they weren't fighting the flame coming from the gas line because, as our expert said, the last thing you want to do is put out that fire because you don't want the gas escaping. It's only going to escape and possibly explode again. But apparently there was not really a big concern that there might be other fires and explosions in the adjacent buildings, but the main explosion happened in the street underground. There's some of the equipment that crews were, look at the water coming out of the building. That's the restaurant building that's at the corner there, the Hong Kong Lounge 2. That gives you some idea of, water's coming in from these different water cannons, these high pressure things, but look at it all coming out through the window, through those front doors. That's how much water they've been, there you go, surround and drown. That's how much water they've been putting on this thing, trying to get the flames out. Now they can actually get close and get into the building and safely do a structure fire containment here. It's been controlled, but now they have to contain it and get the fire out. Again, the evacuations happened, Chief White said, within a 1-block radius. All those folks safely out. There were apparently 8 workers, construction workers, who were part of this crew working for Verizon MCI, and they are all accounted for now, so they are all safe. And we're going to go back to Erica Cato now. She's on the phone line, SFMTA. Hi, Erica. You have an update for me?
Yeah, so we do have some changes to our reroutes. As people know, the 38 line is directly affected by this fire activity, so the 38 and the 38 are rerouted. Inbound, we have moving on Turk to Masonic. Outbound riders will have to take that Geary bus instead on California Street. And we also offer the 31, the 5, and the 1 California as alternate routes if they don't want to deal with that reroute.
And are you adding any lines or subtracting any buses from all of this, or are you trying to keep the same flow?
We have the same flow, but as you know, with reroutes, we do ask that people allow themselves a little extra time to get around.
And any idea, I know I'm kind of shooting in the dark here, but any idea how long you're going to have to do this? I mean, this looks like this is going to go on for a while, maybe through the night. Are you making contingency plans for maybe tomorrow morning even?
So we're touching base with CEM, SF Fire, and once we are able to get closer to the scene of things, we'll be able to make a determination. So right now, we're just doing the reroute that we have, and we'll make further assessment later on. Okay, and again, I was writing as fast as I could, but could you run through those for me again, the reroutes, the situation? Sure. So instead of boarding on Geary, inbound riders, so if you're heading downtown, board on Turk. If you're heading outbound to the avenues, catch the bus on California. And other reroutes people can use are the 31, the 5, and the 1. 31, 5, and the 1. Okay. Yeah, those are neighboring lines. That'll get people to essentially the same destination.
Fantastic. Thanks for updating us. Erica Cato with SFMTA. Thank you again, and keep us updated on any changes. I know you will. Appreciate it so much. All right, if you're just joining us, let me recap for you, because it appears that the flames are now out, but the situation certainly is not clear. Neighbors in the area of Jordan Park are going to be affected for at least through the evening. But the call went out at 1:08 that there was an explosion and a fire when a construction crew working on fiber optic equipment underground on Geary and Parker hit this gas line there, a distribution line, which is a higher pressure line, and it complicates things, as we've been told. But they hit the line. There was the explosion and the fire. People were evacuated. There was a backhoe type of piece of equipment, heavy equipment, that apparently hit hit that line. And that's when the fire started. And here's what it looked like. This is some citizen app video from quite a distance away, a couple of blocks away, but you get an idea there, the perspective of the cars and the signal lights down the road. That's how big the flames were. 30, 40 feet possibly into the air, well above the 2-3-story buildings that are in the neighborhood. But at that corner, there's a U.S. Post Office, there's a bank, Chase Bank, a Hong Kong lounge, restaurant, and an H&R Block. Now, it appears the main building affected is the one that housed that Hong Kong lounge restaurant, a very popular dim sum place, I'm told. And then the H&R Block building across the street, across Parker, that building was also is also one of the 5 that have been affected. But the roads have been closed in that area. And that, of course, affecting, we're getting close to the evening commute here, almost 4 o'clock. Let's go back to Julie Watts and get the latest from her. Julie?
The smoke has cleared out of the area. We're starting to see actually firefighters go back to their rigs. They're not pulling out yet, but it definitely seems that things are certainly improving around here. I mean, the number one obvious example is that there are no more flames shooting out of the ground. We saw those for over two hours today. And a lot of question as to why it took so long to get those flames out, to turn the gas off that was fueling those flames. You know, it's interesting. I just went on to PG&E's website, and they have a public website where you can check to see where your natural gas lines are. You're supposed to check it before you start digging. And I put in the address of the restaurant, and the map shows no lines in the area. Now, obviously, there are lines in the area, but this may be an indication. When we talked to the PG&E rep earlier today, we said, what kind of lines are these? Where is the nearest shutoff? He did not know. He didn't have that information. He didn't even know if there was an automatic shutoff valve that would impact this gas line. So there's still a lot of question as to, what type of information we have about the gas lines running under the city. And following San Bruno, there was definitely a push to install more of those automatic shutoff valves and to really improve the mapping system for these lines. Clearly today, over 2 hours to turn the gas off. Alan, something just didn't go according to plan.
Right, absolutely. All right, Julie Watts on the ground for us. Great job, Julie. Thanks for the update. And as we see from Chopper 5, there was a Muni bus that is starting to make its way through the neighborhood, but this is going to be affected for quite some time. Let me just give you an idea of what I'm being told as far as the PG&E outage map, because we talked about the chief had told some neighbors in this area, you better be prepared to be out of your homes at least through tonight. So make some plans. And it's going to be cold tonight, so they need to get someplace, neighbors, friends, family, whatever, a motel if you can afford it, but you've got to make some plans to be out of your house. So the outage map includes the Jordan Park neighborhood, parts of Presidio Terrace, parts of the inner Richmond, and the Anza Vista neighborhood. So again, Jordan Park, Presidio Terrace, inner Richmond, and the Anza Vista neighborhood. But this fire started just after 1 o'clock. They finally, there's a great perspective of what people in the city, you didn't even have to be in the immediate neighborhood, but this is what people have been able to see. And this is just one iota, one small bit of smoke that indicates where the fire is, because when it was burning much more intensely than that, you could certainly see it from farther away. And the smoke now mostly white as they've really contain this thing now down to a structure fire. If we have some video from earlier, that'll really show you what the heck has been going on. Here's the Citizen app. But again, as I was recapping, this whole thing started at 108. A crew working on fiber optic line underneath the street there on Geary and Parker hit this distribution higher pressure gas line. It ruptured the line. Why that happened, what exactly went wrong, we don't know, but we'll be finding out. And then finally, PG&E they had to be able to be safe, get their crews in close, which they did. It was a very dangerous situation. Firefighters worked the structure fire, trying to keep things safe. They let the gas line burn. They had to let the gas burn, but PG&E crews were able to start digging into the street in Geary, trying to find some way to find a valve or some way to close off the line, which they finally did at 3:36. But again, the businesses in the area all affected, residents in the area all affected, and at this point, We have been told that there are no reported injuries, although we did see one person being taken away on some type of a gurney. We'll get an update, of course, from officials at their next press conference. But again, the situation now seems to be under control. We of course, will be carrying things continuously on our website, kpix.com, and we'll be here live with you. We have team coverage on KPIX5 coming up at 5 o'clock and then again at 6. And our new newscast, be sure and join us at 7 o'clock. So for now, I'm Alan Martin in the KPIX5 studio. We'll go back to regular programming. Everybody be safe. We'll see you at 5 o'clock.
All that and much more.
The CBS Evening News, now at 6:30, followed by the new KPIX5 News at 7, with Kim Bastida and Elizabeth Cook, Paul Diano's weather, and the original reporting you've come to expect. You're working